Almost there. All right, everybody ready?
Ready.
Hello and welcome to the first budget hearing for the 2022-2023 budget. Can we all please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just one thing before we get started. When you do come down here, please speak right into the microphone because we've had some people telling us that they can't really pick it up on the YouTube channel. So let's just try to keep that in mind. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kate to get us started.
Okay, it works. Just to go over a very brief summary of where we are, the budget that was presented to you includes the most recent information that we have regarding the levy and the rateable base, which is the information that you'll find on the budget summary page, the first page. You also will find a memo at your place. There is one change that needs to be made, which we'll make in future versions of the document. The tax rate for automobiles was listed as $26. It's actually $20. And the rateable base is listed at $47,445, but it's actually $61,678. So that does not change the tax levy for the automobiles, which remains 1233560. But it does drop the rate from $26 per thousand to $20 per thousand. So that's just, it's a notable change that you'll see in future versions of this budget.
Excuse me, Ms. Michelle, could you just repeat that second number?
Sure, it's actually in the memo that should be at your place.
Oh, okay, you're right, it's right here.
Okay. Some other notes on the summary page. The number that is included for the Bristol Warren Regional School District is a number that was requested to the Joint Finance Committee. Joint Finance will meet again tomorrow evening. I'm anticipating that they will approve final budget tomorrow evening. But that is the number that was the full ask that was requested. Again, I said in previous correspondence that the process with Bristol Warren Regional School District was excellent this year. It's refreshing. The leadership did a great job, the superintendent, the finance director. So if you have any questions regarding the request for Bristol Warren Regional School District, they have extensively documented their request, and I'm very satisfied that they've done a great job and that their ask is appropriate.
The 13780, that's our working number.
Yes. So you'll see there's one number that's highlighted in yellow on your summary sheet, that 3.30. That is the number that we need to be cognizant of. That's the number that has to remain below 4% in order to meet the state's requirements. So that's why I highlighted it this year, because there's questions. There's so many numbers on there. It's hard. Sometimes I know I lose track of which one we need to be careful of because of the state's requirements, and that's that number. The only other note that I'll make is that Fung and I worked closely on this budget, and we had many versions of it, but in general we stayed with conservative numbers wherever there was a question about what the actual number was going to be. For example, with the shared services insurance number, we're working off an estimate. So we're estimating a 5% increase for the next fiscal year. We don't actually know what that increase is going to be. We don't have the number from our insurance carrier yet, but 5% is a very conservative estimate. So we're very comfortable that it would never be more than 5%. We're hopeful that it's going to be less than 5%. So in general, that was the approach that we took to the budget. If there was a question and it was a potential expense, we tried to be conservative so that we would not be caught short during the fiscal year. So I think at this time, it would be most appropriate to start going through the operating budget. And Recreation is asked to go first in that process because she has a recreation meeting this evening. So if the council is amenable to that, I'd like to start with Recreation.
I just want to ask the council how we would like to go through with it. Would like to, do we want to actually go through every line item at a time, or do we want to approve any changes and then approve the bottom line number as a total? What would be your pleasure on that?
I would say make recommendations as we move through the bottom line,
Okay, good.
each department.
Yeah, I think that's been a good practice. I mean, not that we want to rush through this, but.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tara, it's all yours. Speak into the microphone.
Starting with the operating. So before you is my request for this coming year. The increase is due to one, the minimum wage went up.
Could you wait a second? I'm not even there yet. Just next to-
Way in the back,
under
Joe.
recreation, huh?
Next to police.
Right. You went too far.
Oh,
Which other one do we use? You don't have it?
There you go.
Yeah, I saw it. Here it is. This is capital. We're not on capital, we're not.
Pull up.
I had that one. I thought I just had it.
Yeah, so- Got me one.
Pardon me, I guess you can go on. Go ahead, I'll find it. No, I got it. I put it back in. Like, so, thank you.
all right. So the biggest increase was the fact that minimum wage went up to $12.25. I am looking to hire more supervisors in the summer just because of safety and keeping our group numbers lower now that we're back up to 300 kids during the summer. And the other increases, since we haven't really given lifeguards increases or the assistant director increases, so those were the salary increases for the staffing. Other than that, everything is pretty much the same for staffing. There was an increase in the grants, the band concerts, and that's because we've included movies this year as well, because it was successful. So we are now having movies and concerts during the summer months. And most of the cost for that comes actually out of sponsorships and donations.
Tara, the increase for the lifeguard, does that include increasing the number, or is that
Yes.
the same? That's increasing the number of
Yes.
lifeguards as well.
So we're going to try to have 2 lifeguards on at all times. That way, we can rotate them. They're not there, all day. It's a safer.
That was past practice.
We haven't done it in a long time though. And it is hard to find lifeguards, but I think I've found 4 for this summer. So I think it's going to be possible. And then the Mount Hope High School just built us a new lifeguard stand. So we will actually have 2 locations, one on the wall and one in the existing location.
I was wondering if the other one got replaced.
No, I wanted a second one so that we would have 2 visions. So, so my goal is to have 2 lifeguards on duty at all times.
Are any of them returning?
We have 2 returning and 2 new ones. So far, actually, no one has applied. This is just what everyone has told me. So
Some experience.
we should have 2 experienced lifeguards and then 2 new lifeguards.
So I noticed the manager's request is higher than the department, which is interesting. Is it?
No,
Oh,
No, it's the
the
same.
same.
okay.
Any other,
Yeah, okay, thank you. Got it.
any other questions? How would we like to proceed on the manager request of $157,697 for the recreation operating?
Until next week,
Well,
motion to approve.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Are we also doing capital or? No, that's next week.
that's usually next week, right?
Typically, it's next week. It's up to the council, however you want to handle it.
Yeah, I'll save that for next week.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll go back to the next one is shared services.
So I can review the shared services, and I'll try to just highlight some of the accounts that changed significantly, but please, feel free to ask any questions at all. You'll see in the first line item, Social Security, Medicare, there was a significant increase in that line item. One of the things that we did do differently this year is that for the rescue stipends, we're now paying those through payroll. So there's a FICA expense associated with those rescue stipends. That's 7.65% on those stipends is included in that line item. So that's one of the primary drivers of the increase. The insurance, as I told you before, there's a 5% increase that's budgeted. That's the high end estimate. Hopefully it will be lower. We did increase the postage account. Again, it's a relatively small dollar amount, but that's an account that we run out of virtually every year and come back to the council looking for more. And then postage is scheduled to go up in price. Attendance premiums, you'll see, has gone up significantly. That's gone from 103,000 last year to just over 315,000 this year. That's the payout that goes to retired employees. We do have several employee retirements, both upcoming in the future, the fiscal year 23, but also employees that have just recently retired who will be paid out over a period of installments that will run into next year.
Kate, that includes leftover vacation time and leftover sick time, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So again, there's some longtime employees who have accumulated a significant amount of time. I'm proposing to offset that increase over what we typically pay with a withdrawal from our OPEB account, which was established for reasons such as this. But still, it would affect the tax rate.
And these are employees that are grandfathered in under previous contracts, right?
Correct.
We've
Long-time
changed this process
employees.
Moving forward.
Yes.
Thanks.
Just trying to see. Street lighting, we have reduced. That's the anticipated savings that we expect from turning over the streetlights to the streetlights on state roads to the Department of Transportation. That's based on an actual calculation of the number of streetlights that we will no longer be responsible for the electricity and maintenance on. We're still working through that process, but we're very close, and I'm hoping to have that completed well before the beginning of next fiscal year. Employee pension costs, again, goes up 16.23%. That's an actual calculation that comes to us from MERS, the entire employee retirement system. That's not really something we have any discretion over. That's a number that they provide to us, and we have to fund it. And that's based on their calculations of our retiree costs. Those are the kind of the highlights of the proposed budget, but if anyone has any questions.
I have a question on the contingency fund. Last year, we appropriated 55,000. This year, you're dropping it down to 10. How much of the 55 did we use last year?
So we used virtually all of it because that was used for, in the settlement of the contracts that were outstanding. So, well, the one contract that was outstanding. So that was used, that money will be used to fund the fiscal year 2022 increase for the contract that was just approved with one of our unions.
Okay.
So this year, we don't have any contracts that are pending. So we dropped that down to kind of a minimal amount. It's possible we could have contingency items, but nothing significant like a contract settlement.
And just to clarify me, I think I have a pretty good grasp with the council. Is that the council contingency fund or is that just the?
That's just straight contingency.
Okay,
There's a
all right.
separate line item for council contingency.
Okay, good. Any questions?
I'll accept all the reasons.
Can we have a motion to move ahead with the
So moved.
$5,154,980? We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, next we have the building official.
Again, the building official sends his regrets that he wasn't able to be present. He's watching on YouTube right now. He's hopeful to be able to be present next week, but I can hopefully answer any questions that might come up on. The only significant changes on general and office expense, and it's detailed in the backup. It's a statistical increase, a significant statistical increase, but dollar wise, it's not a large increase at all.
Does it have to do with the software?
It does. It has to do with he's modernizing the process in the building department.
So you reduced his request slightly?
Slightly, yes. Everybody had to take a little bit of a haircut, and there were some things in that office that I think we can share services on with other departments, and we might be able to get done, or we will be able to get done without increasing that specific line item.
So it won't affect the operation, obviously.
I'm confident that it won't.
Kate, are they going to be able to accomplish, I know he wants to do some refurbishing in there to make it a little more streamlined and private with the workers. Will we be able to hit that with this number?
So I included that in the capital budget.
Okay,
So there is a line item in capital, and again, the primary focus on that is to increase security. As you know, that office is wide open.
I was in there the other day and it just was like, yeah, it wasn't, it just needs to be upgraded, more modernized.
So you'll see I did put a budget line item in the capital lot to accomplish that. It is a priority.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion for operating for the building official for $166,245.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is municipal court.
Again, the police chief is here, but these expenses are not very interesting. They're pretty steady. The increase in computer services, that's for the software that we utilize for the municipal court. That's the actual dollar increase that's being required by the software proprietor for the annual maintenance. The only other increases are, the 2% that was proposed for the staff and the judge, and everything else is level.
Okay, did we, the boarding cleanup, we've only got $5,000 in there. I thought I was hoping that, well, I wasn't hoping that we had to spend more money, but I was hoping that we were going to get a little bit more aggressive and be able to, instead of having people come back to court 5 or 6 times after the third bite at the apple, we get a vendor out there, we clean it and we lien the property, which is all in the enabling legislation, and in that, how we got the housing court in Warren. Is $5,000 enough for that? Is my question is.
At this time, that's the number that we're requesting. We are in the process right now of recruiting for a new code enforcement official with the intention that we are going to be more comprehensive in our enforcement on housing and code related issues. certainly I can discuss this with the building official and come back to you next week if there's an amendment that he'd like to request.
Yeah, that sounds good, because like I said, I would like to see us get, the whole point of this was to get more aggressive, and, so, yeah, speak with him if he thinks how much of the 5,000 did we use last year?
I don't know if we've used any of it,
Okay, that's
so
not
I think
good.
that's probably one of
Yeah,
the
that's
issues.
not good. Okay, all right, yeah, have a chat with the building official. We can always rediscuss this at the next meeting, but yeah, I thought we were gonna get much more aggressive, and I thought that 5,000 was low, but, okay.
And if there are any candidates at home who are interested in applying for the code enforcement position, the information is on our website.
And that's part of the reason why we weren't more aggressive, is that our code enforcement officer no longer here, wasn't really up to snuff. So moving forward.
Moving forward.
Moving forward.
All right,
We've been without a code enforcement officer.
Probably 5 years.
2 weeks, just almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the loss of that position.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. President. I think that is important. And, whether it be a combination of code enforcement and the judge working together.
right,
Obviously.
correct.
So, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions on municipal court? Can we have a motion to approve the operating
Can I-
expenses?
Real quick, before you move on, do we have what the municipal court takes in for revenue?
I don't know that they have taken anything significant in revenue. They have tens of thousands of dollars in potential fines, but I don't believe anything's been collected or,
Yeah, because we get
Almost
a
nothing.
piece that doesn't go to RITT.
right.
Yeah, and what is the state delayed in sending
Oh.
it back?
I'm sorry, I was thinking of housing
Okay.
court, municipal court. There is a report on
Okay.
municipal court revenue in your packet.
Yep.
So the gross for the last fiscal year was 39,695. Rhode Island RITT got just over 11,000 and the net to the town is 27,829.
Okay.
Again, last year was an odd year because of COVID. If you look back historically at previous years, that number was higher. We'll see what happens in the next fiscal year. We were conservative with our revenue estimates that you'll see in the budget because we don't really know what's in front of us.
Okay, we had a motion, I believe, for the municipal court.
I'll make a motion to approve $50,061.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we go to the harbor master.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Eddie, how are you?
I can't find you.
Just break a little municipal court.
Ah, there we go. Okay. It's all yours.
All right, so some minor increases in operating. Start with the assistant harbor master wages went up to 12,000. Looking to add a fourth position there. Out of that 12,000, that'll pay all four of them over the course of the summer. 20 weeks is what it works out to. So not a big increase to add another body and some extra patrol hours. The additional $1,000 in the operating expense account. To account for the fourth position, there'll be some additional costs, having that fourth person, buying some equipment for them, those types of things. We did reduce significantly the restroom account, but we do need to maintain, from the manager and I met, we at least need to maintain 4,000 to handle pump outs of the existing bathrooms that we purchased. Supplies for that bathroom, so we do need to maintain that account.
Was the 14,000 part of the purchase?
So that
before?
we had put that in for the rental of one if we needed to go that
Alright.
route. But we ended up utilizing those funds to help purchase this one, and we're still building a handicap ramp, which should be installed here shortly.
Yep,
So
Thank you.
That came out of those funds. So, the dock maintenance account stays the same. We 5,000 pretty much covers that, so we don't have any real issues there. Haven't had to exceed that yet. So,
Questions?
Motion to approve 59,795.
We have a motion
And I'll second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have town manager.
So the primary changes are outlined in your budget transmittal letter that was submitted. There's an increase proposed in the part-time clerk line item. And the proposal that we're still working on finalizing, but what I'd like to budget for is to combine the part-time clerk position with the part-time municipal court position and create a full-time position out of those two part-time positions. What this would do to allow us to have another full-time person in the town clerk's office, which is something the town clerk has been requesting for years, but also to consolidate the municipal court clerical functions within that office, which they've been doing over the last couple of years whenever the municipal court clerk isn't available. So that what you'll see is the increase in that line item is the difference between what we already have budgeted and what the cost would be for a full-time clerk when you combine the line items.
Kate, did that drop under the municipal court, did that drop that number down?
It didn't, because you have to combine the two line items to come up with the total cost of what a full-time position would be. So if you combine the municipal court clerk line item with this part-time clerk line item, you get to the cost of a full-time staff member.
Have you thought about having 4 part-time people?
It is not something that we had thought about.
Monetarily, it would be less.
It's something that, I mean, I'd have to talk to the town clerk because part of this is her request to have a full-time person instead of her office instead of a part-time. I don't know if 2 part-time people would functionally do the same thing.
I mean, for a trial, right? I mean, everything's a trial, unless, of course, you put it into the union contract.
Right.
And then it's a trial you live with.
If we could take the same line item and call it part-time clerk 2, and we could split that into 2 people and do 2 part-time clerks for the same budget line item. That wouldn't have a fiscal impact as far as what's being proposed. Again, before we do anything, we'd have to come back to the council with job descriptions and get the council's approval before we went forward with seeking candidates for any of these positions. And we have not done that yet. So
If I could just follow up a bit on where I was going with that thought process. So many times in policy, we try to first we identify the problem, we try to solve the problem. So it seemed like you were talking about a personnel shortage.
yes,
So the first thought that goes to me is trying to expand on what you're short in. Going with 1 additional person working that full-time job may not necessarily give you the flexibility and the movement of capital that you're looking for. If it doesn't work,
And that's fine. I was thinking of just giving me somebody 25 hours a week. And if that person needs to work a little bit overtime, then let me have the ability to have that person work a little bit over. But just the 1 person, 5 hours a day, instead of the full-time, if you don't want to give me the full-time, that's fine. I'm good with that. And or if you want to do the 2 part-timers from 8 to 12, 12:30 and 12:30 to 4:30, that's fine too.
I've been taught by somebody who's actually in the room, Mr. Alfano, when we put it in a contract, it's there for life. So if right now I'm hearing that we have some personnel shortage where we want to increase our workload or decrease our workload, increase our work potential, why don't we try adding more part-time? And then if it doesn't work, we can always, down the road, go into that contract. But I've been here enough to where you add that contractual employee, and then now all of a sudden we have a shortage again.
right.
So now we're going back to hiring another part-time, but we're already paying somebody the cost of 3 part-timers once they're in the contract. So I would rather see the money go that way first.
Kate,
Everything's a trial.
Kate, I did the quick math because you said we had to add both of them. So if we went with with the full-time clerk, it would cost us 43,565 before any benefits.
Correct. So I think that's an excellent idea. I mean, if you let me work on that idea over the next week and come back to you and see if it requires any adjustments.
Yep, I think Fung had something she wanted to add.
Oh, okay. Fong is telling me we have a third line in the town clerk's budget related to this position, which makes it an all-inclusive cost, including benefits. So let us go back and do some revisions based on adding a part-time position instead of consolidating those positions into full-time, and then we can come back to you next week with an updated number. I don't think it's going to be significantly different. It'll be a little bit less, but that's a thought that we had not discussed.
I mean, I don't know how the rest of the,
No, I-
throw it out there for the rest of the council's
I
discussion.
agree with you, Joe.
The only thing I'm thinking of is that across this nation has become the great resignation. We're just trying to find quality candidates. So, I mean, I'm open to anything as a discussion, but you're looking for two or one to be two or potentially
It
four.
would be one new.
One new.
I
And
believe
then-
that's,
Well, if it's one new, because the one that's in my office right now is not mine. She belongs to Kate. So it would be one brand new, 25 hours unless a little bit more if I need her, especially around election time, but 5 hours a day, Monday through Friday. If you're not going to give me the full time, because I know that's where it's ending up.
I think I think it's 20 hours is the cutoff. If we go more than 20 or more,
29.
don't we have to offer benefits?
29, right?
typically part-timers in the town have been no more than 19.
Okay,
That's been
that's
the
what I mean,
town's
20.
policy.
Yeah, the number 20, yeah.
But I
So-
thought we were just talking about, instead of having to pay into MERS and anything like that, they can work up to 29 hours? Yeah, 30 hours and up, they got to pay into MERS, 30 hours and down, less than 30 hours, so 29 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can work with Sandy and we can come up with a proposal and come back to you next week, again,
Okay.
with any fiscal impacts that there may be. Again, if there's a new part-time position that's created, we will still have to come back to the council with a job description. We'll still have to go through that process before we can actually hire, but at least we can come back to you next week with an idea of what the financial impact would be.
Okay.
But just so I can clarify, make sure I'm still thinking the same thought. Your personnel shortage was in multiple departments.
Our personnel shortage was primarily within the town clerk's office.
But they are afloat to other offices.
Correct. They're
So
afloat to
filling
other
that,
offices.
so again, the way I was, just to make sure I'm hearing what I thought I heard. So that person is in other roles
Correct.
and technically it's in your office.
Technically, it's in my office, yes.
So again, I say, why don't we try part-time in other offices and see if that satisfies your need?
What I'm going to suggest is possibly, we'll let Kate run through the rest of her stuff, but I'm going to suggest we pull that out for tonight's meeting.
Sure.
And we approve the number without that in it. And then next week she can come back with that information we're looking for on the two positions instead of this one. But, so that being said, any other questions so far, or want to let Kate finish going through?
No, I mean, I think, Joe, you make a good point. There's, advantages and disadvantages to two part-timers as opposed to one full-timer. I mean, I've been up against that myself in business, and you can make kind of both arguments, but certainly two part-timers actually gives you more flexibility in a way too. So it's an added benefit there. Sometimes you
Possibly.
switch people out. So.
Okay, Kate, we're on the grant writer now.
Sure. Just for trying to keep the budget skinny, we had removed that request from the budget this year. A lot of the grant writing project coordinator functions have been covered under grant programs specifically and through the use of consultants. So I would like to keep this as an item in the budget for future funding, but I'm not requesting funding this year for that line item. And then you'll see right under that, there's a line item for IT staff with no dollar amount assigned, and that this is also detailed in your budget letter. In working with the police chief and looking at the budget for what we spend in IT, both for town hall and for government center, and then, for over DPW, For the total amount that we're spending, we're considering the idea of moving to a staff position for IT. I think there could be savings to the town if we had a staff position as opposed to utilizing multiple consultants. And that we would get a better product if we had one staff person versus multiple consultants that don't necessarily know what the other one is doing. So what we're doing is we're working on a job description and working with some experts in the field on what would satisfy the needs of the town. And when we have an idea of what that looks like, we would like to return to the council to explore that opportunity. Again, don't anticipate any fiscal impact because I think what we're spending right now on IT will suffice. But it's something that just wanted to add a line item because that's under consideration for the next fiscal year.
Just have to coordinate the contracts ending, starting, right, for your IT consultants.
Yes. And again, it may be something that, you know, we may do some research and find that there's not the talent out there that's available to us at the price point that we're able to afford. So that's something we need to explore before we make any changes.
That's what I was thinking. All right, motion to approve.
Joe, do we want to do a motion to pull out the town manager, part-time clerk, the amount of 25,194? We can always put back in what Kate says later.
Was it the part-time or the full-time? Where was,
Part-time.
yeah, but where was the fiscal impact gonna be?
Under the
Here or-
part-time, the full-time floating clerk is an existing position in the contract. That's a position that we already have. That person is assigned permanently up in building and tax assessor and then floats out to other offices as needed. It's under the part-time clerk position. The 12,503 is what we budgeted last year for the existing one part-timer. So the number 25,194 is the number in question.
So if we want to take it out of the
So what would,
Right.
221,533.
what would the math be?
I think it comes out to 196,359,
196,339.
339.
I move 196,339 for the manager's budget.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next, we have town offices.
Not much to explain. I didn't propose a change to the council wages and salaries because last year it became obvious that for the amount of the change and the complications that exist because you can't accept an increase while you're sitting. I didn't propose an increase and that's not meant as an insult to anyone.
We want to stay in line with the charter.
Council contingency, I just left that the same. Obviously, that's the council's purview if you'd like to increase or decrease that amount. No money's needed for the sound system this year because we have everything we need on order, which hopefully will be here soon. Planning zoning solicitor and a solicitor that went up by the same 2% that I'm proposing for all the other positions. Town sergeant remained the same and tree warden increased by 2%. And then the Charter Commission did not have a request this next fiscal year. It's anticipated that the bulk of their work will be done and then the remaining that work that needs to be done would fall into the town clerk's office.
The council sound system, where are we at with that now?
Everything's on order and we're waiting for one part to be delivered, which apparently is the linchpin part and nothing else can be done until that one part arrives.
Okay, so we're still waiting for our upgrade.
We are,
Okay, thanks. We need it.
we do.
Kate, the solicitor services, are those renewed annually?
No, it's an ongoing and it falls under the council's purview. So they serve at will to the council. There's no contract.
There's no contract.
Nope, they're at will.
Kate, the administrative officer, is that for both zoning and planning?
Where are we?
The top line, boards and commissions and administrative.
Oh, I think we,
No,
Yeah.
no.
I'm on the wrong page.
Yep.
yeah, boards and commissions, I think we're gonna look at next week.
Lost my place when I started coughing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the,
Motion to approve
We
160.
didn't have to pay the charter commission, we used the 4,500. Because it's lined out.
Right, that was the request for the current fiscal year is the 4,500, but they will be done with the bulk of their work prior to the end of this current fiscal year.
Okay. So,
And can I just ask, this, the town sergeant
Yeah,
has
the $100
been in there, I mean, it's $100, so no loss or gain, but
It's obsolete.
it's an obsolete thing. Didn't we have a discussion in a previous budget cycle to do away with it? Or is it, it's in the charter?
It's in the charter.
It's in the
Is
charter.
there anybody here in the room who has anything to do with the charter commission?
I
If
think,
so,
yeah. Well,
chief?
we can't address it.
I
but
know,
you
I
hear
know.
us.
Yeah.
You hear us, yeah.
they're
Yeah.
not paying attention anyway, so.
No, they're paying a little attention, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure when we have the discussions with the charter commission, we can bring it up. Right? I mean,
We can also
Not that we
propose
can do
charter
it.
amendments ourselves.
when they come to us.
Yeah, when they come to
But we
us,
could either, ask them for their advice while they're sitting, and then when it comes to us. The discussion was on the town sergeant.
Okay, so we got a motion for 163,237 for town offices.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 163,237 for the town offices.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next up is town planner. Don't forget to speak into the microphone.
Any questions?
Yeah, pretty level all the way across.
I let all my staff go.
Any questions for the planner operating expenses? Can we have a motion to approve $97,511 for operating expenses for the town planner?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next up, senior center.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello. This is pretty level all the way across as well. Any questions from the council?
Any questions?
No.
No? Can we have a motion?
It's great.
Yeah, can
I'll
we
make
have
a motion that we approve the 46,961 as the town manager's request.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Next, we have social services.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
You're fairly level across except for the increase in the substance abuse grant match. Could you just elaborate on that just a little bit?
Sure, we're in year 5 of our DFC grant, and every year they ask for a certain amount to match the drug-free community grant, so that's why it went up a little bit.
Okay. Any questions from the council?
I mean, that's in compliance with what we have to fund, right? Or else we don't receive the other.
The
money.
federal
All right,
grant,
yep.
yes,
Thank you.
yes, this is year 5, and next year we will be applying for year 6 through 10.
Motion, you want a motion?
Yep, motion to approve $38,918 for operating for social services.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, thank you. And can I just leave some flyers with you for some of our upcoming things that we're going to be doing at the schools?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Should we vote on the total for town offices at this time?
The numbers
No.
changed
Yeah,
from the other amount, and I'm sure you guys know what it is, right?
we just vote, yeah, we vote on it next month. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
do all the totals next month.
Fine with me.
Okay. Next on that is finance.
Yes. The major increase in my budget is the payroll processing and services that is due to the increase for processing the fire rescue because the number of number of pay increased. We also experienced discount phasing out, and we are also looking into implementing the HR handbook. So that's basically it for the increase.
Could you just be a little more specific on the reference to the fire and rescue?
Because the number of payee increase, there's a per person processing fee, there is a per month processing fee. So as the number increases. the fee
So our
increases.
numbers go up, the fee goes up.
Correct.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Understandable.
And did you say you're having it's paychecks, correct?
Correct.
They're doing a handbook?
Yes, they do
So
have
that's
that
ex-
service, but we currently don't have that. So we can sign up per month. So we're looking into just about 3 months process. So, and if we need them to stay a little bit longer to finish that, that can be a little bit higher, but they also can finish it before 3 months time. That's the estimate that they provide to us.
And just to elaborate, this is something that Fung and I have discussed in detail. We have an existing employee handbook, but we really need some assistance in bringing it together into a cohesive document. Right now, it's just basically a collection of policies and making sure that any of the policies and procedures that are required by federal law are adequately covered and updated within the handbook. So we would subscribe to that subscription with the payroll processing company for the number of months that's required to get that work done. And then we could discontinue that service basically once the handbook is in order.
That makes sense. I mean, the handbook has to be up to snuff because otherwise it could get picked apart. So.
Right. And we've updated policies, sporadically, but we really need, again, to make sure that it's a cohesive document and that it's all updated in the way it should be.
We didn't even actually have a handbook, did we?
There was one. Yes. Yep.
I thought that's what you were referring to as the policies.
Yeah, there was one, but again, there was a cohesive handbook that the last version I found is maybe 10 plus years old. But over time, there's been addendums to it. So it's just been added on to without any revisions to the complete document.
And I'm sure Anthony agrees with you. This is money well spent.
Absolutely. And I'm sure our insurance company agrees.
There's one other increase of 25% on the outside services. Could you explain that?
Right. We have Opal, we have admins, and that also includes the tax bill printing. So the printing cost goes up and the annual maintenance for both softwares go up as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council?
No, I don't.
Can we have a motion for approval of $273,165 for operating for finance, treasurer, tax collector?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have tax assessor.
Hello.
Oh,
Lou.
Hey, Chris.
So the numbers didn't jump up too much in any one category. I guess if you look at the outside services, you'll see about a $5,000 increase from last year. That was basically to budget for appraisal work if we need it this year. It's something that I haven't budgeted for in the past. There's a few higher end properties this year that I think it'd be beneficial to the town to have that in there, just in case we want to defend an appeal or have another opinion of value.
Questions from the council? Okay, can we have a motion to approve tax assessor operating expenses in the amount of $113,437?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have fire safety.
And if I could just preface the discussion on fire safety, I just want to note that I met several times with the fire chief and, we went through every line of this budget multiple times. I did reduce some of his requests, but he's here tonight to explain to you why he made those original requests. And certainly I'm in support of all of them. The only reason that I reduced them was to try to bring down the overall levy that we were facing, because of other unavoidable increases. So I'll let the chief obviously explain his request, but if I could give the fire department a lot more, I would. But I made some cuts in my recommendations, just based on what I thought we could afford.
Okay, thank you. I agree with the most of the proposals put forth by the town manager. I would just like to go over a couple of the line items as you see my request. The first I'd like to start with is second line down, fire prevention, fire marshal. If you remember, we did approach this last year, and we did get a small increase for that position. It's my goal to keep that position competitive with other towns in the area. It's a very important position in the town. We just got it in a few years ago, and the tasks that are accomplished there is never ending. I do have comparables, and last year, one thing you asked for was performance and responsibilities. I do have copies of that if you'd like to see it as well. So to start with the salary, it's hard to do comparables around neighboring towns. I can list them off, but it goes from as low as $57,962 in Bristol currently. We'll be requesting $60,000 in this year's budget for their fire marshal in Bristol, to as high as $86,000 in East Providence. And that includes towns of Bristol, Barrington, Swansea, Portsmouth, East Providence, Tiverton, Little Compton, and Middletown. Try to stay in this general area for comparisons, for comparables. So my request for him was a $58,000, just try to get to closer to that range of the Bristol marshal.
Sure. So when you do a comparative analysis to the other communities, are the other communities utilizing that person as a first responder?
They are. I mean, it's tough to compare because some of those other communities are paid full-time employees in a union contract. They've moved up through the ranks. And usually when they get to that position, they fall into a preset salary and they get a rank with it. So that's why it's difficult to.
I was thinking our position is utilized more because of the fact that he's almost that position, along with you and the office staff, as well as the stipend, are the only full-time staff that we have. That's correct. So a lot of times, I'm not in town that much anymore, but when I am, and a lot of times when I see a call, I see that position. If you're not right there, that person is.
Yes, that's
true. I think that has to be recognized in our quasi-volunteer paid position. It's a paid position, but it's not an office position. It's not somebody just checking fire alarms. It's somebody who has all the certifications and is utilized. Right. I just want to make sure that is understood. When you're looking for a salary increase, they're potentially doing a lot of physical, hands-on first responding work.
Like you referenced other towns, a lot of those strictly just do this position, and Warren, that person does not. Even by the job descriptions, it's all over the place.
That's what I wanted to make sure if I was hearing that my fellows are.
And if I could comment, I mean, I fully support the chief's request, both for the wages for himself and also for the fire marshal. The reason that I proposed the 2% increase versus what was requested is because of the council's existing policy on payment of non-union staff, which basically says that non-union staff should be paid, that everybody, if they receive a rate increase, it should be on parity. I do think that the fire prevention salary is, I've looked at what the chief has collected for data. We are considerably below basically anybody else. And again, for the chief himself, and he won't say it because he's a modest fellow, but there's only one fire chief in the state of Rhode Island who makes less than our chief. And I think that his plate is extremely full and he wears many hats every day.
So the problem is, when these positions were created, the salaries were way below the industry standard. So now, every year, because we had this conversation last year.
Correct.
And, you know, I'm gonna bring it up, it's like, look, we're not gonna deny that we want to support. But how do we tell the public we gave that position a 20% increase? So now maybe what we should do, yeah, I understand it's on paper, but like, maybe what we should be thinking about doing is reorganizing that job description and then now making it more in line with the industry standard. Instead of you trying to come back to us every year saying, hey, I put in for 58, but she gave me 49. You know,
Yeah,
so
it's-
maybe pull this out and come back to us.
Well, if
Yeah.
last year, instead of looking at the item and defending our actions, we looked at the percentage increase and arbitrarily cut it in half.
Correct. That's exactly what we.
Problem one
Yeah.
hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
So the reality is, if we're going to value this position and keep a person in that position who's qualified to do what they are doing, we should increase the line item. And if the public doesn't understand it, maybe they'll vote you out. If you're sitting in this seat and you do the right thing, whether you're reelected or not, doesn't prevent you from doing the right thing. These numbers have to be under 4%. That's our bottom line. That's where we're going to be. The longer we want to kick the can down the road, the latter in the future, you're going to have the discussion of when do you defend the position? And quite frankly, 5 years down the road, if the person's there, then there isn't a reason to increase. You're trying to create something that keeps a person in a position with the qualifications needed to do the job for the town of Warren. Because this position in other towns goes out, checks fire alarms, goes back and sits at their desk. That's not what we have here. We have a paid department of 4 people that have a great network of support by another 60 active members. So I can hear what you're saying, but I don't agree with it. The reality is an increase is going to be an increase. And if the people utilize the process that's available and don't like it, they have the tools available to come to the council budget meeting and change it. I have no problem defending our reasons if this council chooses to, just like I did last year. I think I was looking for a 13% increase. It didn't go anywhere. The right is still there. We just haven't made the decision to impact financially how we should support that position. It's just another calendar year.
I tend to agree with Joe. I mean, it's obviously the position, you know, is more extensive than it is in other communities, and salary should reflect that. And I mean, you're not asking for excessive, something up way above what other communities offer. You're asking for equality there, and I understand that. Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what the other counselors are saying, but it's an issue that we're having across the board in all of our department heads. I mean, we are paying lowest in the industry in many of our high achieving departments, from the manager to the planner to the finance director. I mean, just look around the room. We have some really incredibly high quality people, and how do we afford to pay them what they are for the work that they're doing and the quality that they're bringing to the table? And that is the conundrum. And, you know, I look around and I know what we're paying you all, and it just seems not commensurate with the jobs that you're doing. So, you know, when our revenue starts to increase as we bring more properties online in the future, how do we balance that out with the 4% cap and paying people in a more appropriate fashion?
If I might, there's one thing I would like to add that is in the current budget that is included in your packet of information is that this year I'm proposing that we amend the policy for the non-union supervisory employees hired after 2006. Employees hired prior to 2006 are eligible for longevity. That has not been something that's offered to people after 2006. And what I propose is to bring back longevity for these staff members, the supervisory non-union staff members. All union employees receive longevity. So basically it's just the department heads hired after 2006 currently that don't receive it. It wouldn't, obviously new hires wouldn't be eligible for it, but some of our hires that have been here for a little while would be eligible. And it would bring them a little closer to being paid on parity with other communities.
Discussion of when we speak about salaries across the board, let one thing stick out clearly. This position was created, it was created with a dollar amount that at that calendar year's budget we thought would be feasible. It was not created as a dollar amount that was going to be expected to stay there. When we created it, it was to see if we could get somebody qualified to fill that position. When we look at all of our underpaid, comparative underpaid positions in the state, that's true. And all of them have jumped because when we put our applications out, we realized that if we don't increase our asking price, we're not going to get anyone. So if anybody wants to do a comparative analysis to department heads of 10 years ago to where they are now, the number is higher. Are they still the lowest? Yes. If this position ever gets vacated, I don't think we're going to be able to get anybody in that office that's going to be as qualified. And I think that retention is number one. And I'm not talking about the individual. We're lucky to have that person. I'm talking about the position. I think that when we get done with this budget, finding the money through this process is going to be readily available. And if not, at the final budget, it's not set in stone. But I don't think that this position should continuously be looked at and accepted as undervalued and respected as highly as we do. I think that the numbers aren't showing the reality that we should pay. When I make a motion for an increase to the 58,000.
I'm not done talking yet. Hold on. Yeah, if you're done, I have a few points to say.
Sure.
Here's private sector does this all the time. Reorganize this position, give it a different title, come back with us to the salary that's compatible to that new reorganized position, and then we can buy into this. But just so we're perfectly clear, whatever this ask is going to be, we'll have to deal with Public Works, police unions. Well, I want to be compared to this police department. I want to be compared to this public department. So I would reorganize the position. And I'm not trying to tell you what, I mean, it's like I'm looking at this and like we're having the same conversation that we had last year and the year before and the year before that. I would reorganize it, give it a different title and say, hey, this is where they should be paid.
It is the job description that was put together when the position was created.
Yeah.
Bottom section, all the tasks are done by that position currently. In those tasks do fall into the duties of a fire marshal in other towns. It's not anything that's created for Warren. I don't know what you'd like to call it.
You can call him whatever you want. You can call him a special firefighter, fire marshal Bill. I don't care what you want to call him, but like, at least you would have like, hey, this is what the position was. Now this is what the position is going to be moving forward into 22 and 23. Private businesses do this every day of the week, get reorganization where a senior VP is there one day and the next day they're not. They've moved it into combined, departments with it.
I don't understand your question.
Well,
I don't
because
know.
my
Hang
question
on, hang on.
is
One at a time.
I think I
if you're
understand.
saying that he's overutilized or he's doing some more, then reclassify him. Reclassify him that is something else other than, because Joe, I hear you loud and clear, but other folks that do fire inspections, they're going to fires also. They're not driving by a fire. If there's a fire and they're a fire inspector, they're going to them. They're doing the same jobs that he's doing here. We just see him more because it's a small community. but they're doing the same job everywhere. But if you want to bump him up, then let's bump him up in title and pay, not just in pay only. That's where I'm going.
I didn't, not to interrupt, but I think I understand what Mr. Kalenda is getting at, and I think that we could do that and achieve the goals of both Councilman Kalenda and Councilman Di Pasquale. If you would allow us to work on that over the next week and then come back to you
Bring it back.
at the next meeting, then I think we could accomplish those goals. But it would be good if the council could give some kind of feedback as to whether they think with potentially revised job title and description, if 58,000 would be an adequate target number that you would consider.
I think that's right in the target number. Yeah. You know,
As this is a public meeting, I see our ex-chief would like to come up and speak. You got to speak into the microphone now.
it's the folks that are watching on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Obviously, everybody wants more money. Who gets it, who doesn't? The chief has been doing a phenomenal job. The chief of the department, well underpaid, and he's similar to the previous chief. They're not looking for the money so much. You just want to do a great job. Your fire marshal, chief, put that in. Not too many people here know what the marshal does, other than fire defense. We talk about going by fires. Fire marshals, if you look at fire marshals outside this area, they're fire marshals. This guy that we're talking about, I've done multiple EMS calls. He's advanced cardiac. When we get to second and third rescue calls, and we do advanced life support, we're generating anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 for that call. If he chose not to do that call, it calls mutual aid in, which we lose funding. So yes, we can look at it and say, okay, let mutual aid take it, but that's money the town loses. Matthews has done above and beyond. 2:30 in the morning, when everybody's sleeping, he's getting up to help that second rescue call, to make sure it's advanced life support, to make sure the person that's having that chest pain or having that seizure is being taken care of at no extra expense. Not getting paid any connection for it. I don't want to speak over the chief. The chief will stop me and slap me upside the head anytime he wants. But this kid does a lot. It's because it's hot, so it's into. And you gotta look at it. Yeah, sure, it looks like a 20% increase or whatever it might be in his salary, but know what? The $40,000 or $50,000 that he's generated for third-party billing that you receive, he's well worth the money. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the person, I'm looking at the position, because that's how we have to, because he could die tomorrow and that position's gonna be here. I hope he doesn't, but I have to stick to the reality that this isn't an evaluation of that employee. This is an evaluation of the budget process, and we're trying to put our policy in place with the position.
We do have a motion on the floor. I don't know if we're going to have a second for that, or would we like to consider possibly just carrying this number over till the next meeting and instruct the town manager and the fire chief to come back with an updated job description with that target number?
I think the manager suggested that. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm in favor of them coming back and giving them an opportunity to rework it.
I'll make a motion for 58,000 to that line item.
We have a motion? Second.
Well, I'd like to second, but I'd like to see rework done as town manager suggested, so.
Would Councilman Di Pasquale consider amending his motion to include the $58,000 pending an updated job description from the town manager and the fire chief?
Sure, but I don't see them being hand in hand, because the financial has nothing to do with the policy. So if you come back with a policy with an update to the description, you're still gonna have to put in the math.
Right,
So
I'm just saying.
I have no
Well,
problem.
we didn't have a second to your motion, so if it's changed, it sounds like Councilman Deckard may second it.
I know that all of these numbers are gonna be different next time we meet.
Yeah.
So I have no problem moving anything forward.
It is about retention, as you've been saying. retention and competitive to keep the position. That's what it comes down.
But again, I feel inherently is the fact that this was created. This isn't a long-standing position that's been passed on, and we've gone along with a 2% increase. We made a mistake when we created the position at the number that we put there.
Wanted to get it.
And I'm looking for a rectification of that mistake. That's where I'm coming from. So you want to change the job description? Sure. I still think that the 58,000 is warranted. I have no problem with the job description change. And I
Yeah,
have-
but, yeah, because the motion was 58,000,
Mhm.
but we didn't get a second. But if it was 58,000 pending the submission of a new job description by the town manager and the fire chief for the next budget hearing, I think you may get a second on that.
And I think that would be great. What I'm trying to do is separate the two because I don't find them to be
Right.
connected.
I understand that, but we don't have a second on the motion. Do we have any other motions?
I make a motion
I'm not
that we,
stopping the policy. I'm not stopping the job description change.
No, I know, but we weren't getting a second on
I
the
hear
motion,
ya.
Joe.
I'm okay with revising the job description, working on it.
I make a motion that we allow the fire chief and the town manager to come back to us with a new revised job description and a salary request at our next budget meeting.
Okay, do you want to, and keep the 58,000 as a placeholder?
Maybe, yeah, keep the 58,000 as a placeholder, but you may come back with a bigger number.
All right, but at least we got the 58,000 as
Yeah.
a placeholder.
I will second that
We
motion.
can't, we can't
We have
agree
a-
with an increase now.
We have a motion
Second.
and we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
All right, the next item. I think there was on fire communications, I think there was a numerical typo there on that one. The 15607. It was 15067. Okay, so that should go back down to
What's the name of the line item?
fire
Communications.
communications.
Typo.
Okay.
Yep, so instead of 607, it's 067.
All right, the next we get to is the third-party billing rescue stipends. The request that was put in was for $565,600. As you know, we pay on a stipend formula per shift. They do 12-hour shifts, 365 days a year. We've recently gone from 2 people on a shift to 3, the third vehicle to offer assistance on that first call, and be in town. We're tapping into the outside resources to help us with the second call that we struggle to get out sometimes. The increase came to, now I break it down per hour because it's easy to understand. That request came to $20 an hour for those shifts, with money aside to still pay for that second and third call. That still would get paid per call, and that was proposed to go up to $50 per call from currently $40. So that was the reason for the request, and comparables to that, I have to go out to the western part of the state, and they're all broken down per hour as well. Patchett, Harmony, Pasco, North Situate, and then locally is Bristol and Swansea. They're anywhere from $17 an hour to $25 an hour base, depending on their level of ALS, BLS, paramedic, basic EMT. Currently, our stipend is $12.50 per hour, if you break it down to the hourly from the $140 per shift.
Didn't we up that to 150 last year?
I'm sorry, yes, $150 now, and with some, we just recently went up to $160, hopefully to close out the final part of this fiscal year at $160 per shift, okay, 12-hour shift. Bristol, as we know, has a paramedic system in town, and they have a cost for that, but they're currently still paying per call for the EMTs that go out and transport to the hospital. That's a system we got away from a few years ago. Bristol, if you want the dollar amount, I think they pay around, these numbers are not exact. They pay around $450,000 for the paramedic service, and they pay about $35 per call to the EMTs in the truck. And Swansea is like anywhere from $18.50 to $25 an hour based on the level of care. So that was the request put into the town manager for the 565,600. That got that up to roughly $20 an hour.
Now, with the number that the manager came back with, what would that, do you have an idea what that would put it at an
Just-
hour?
To leave money aside for that second and third call was just about $15 an hour.
And again, this is a line item that I do understand the request, and I obviously fully support the chief's request and understand it. But for financial reasons, obviously, I was trying to moderate the request. It's still a significant increase. Percentage-wise, 23.18% is what I'm recommending as an increase. When you factor in the FICA charges that we're now encountering because we're paying rescue through payroll instead of as a untaxed paycheck, that total increases by another $33,216, which means the overall line item, including FICA, is actually a 32.6% increase over the current fiscal year.
Chief, do those other communities pay FICA and all of that?
I'm not sure on all the detail in their stipend, what they get, it's taxed and so on. That, I did not get that much information. I did get call volumes, and we are much higher in the call volume department than most of those other towns.
Is this line item fully exhausted every year?
Yes.
Do you know how far over we went to 352.5 in the last fiscal budget? How much we overthrew that account?
Well, we're still in that,
Okay.
we're still in
Okay.
it, so we won't know.
We try to estimate, we estimate it, call volume, and second and third calls is always an unknown number. We was estimating on 800 calls a year, or second and third calls. So we always try to get what's due to them as the year goes on, but not put ourselves behind and have to cut their pay the following year.
So there'd be a slight wage increase with the managers. The reality of the change would be, where do we find it in the budget making the cuts? And that's the council's responsibility now.
The other thing, Joe, is we're picking up on the cost of paying FICA as well.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. But I mean, what the chief is bringing to us, which everyone has to realize, is if we were interested in funding the 565,600, then we have to figure out how much, what's the difference of
Not
that?
131 roughly.
You know, so where do we cut 131,000 from the budget? Because we still have to come in under 4%.
It's actually a little bit more than that, because if you were to go to the full ask amount, then you'd have to add another 5,725 for FICA on top of the number I just gave you.
It's like 136.
So, but again, the responsibility to the council doesn't go away. So if that's something we're thinking about, it's not like we can just dip into something,
I understand.
because we have this budget presented to us, which did the hard work to let us know where we are in regards to the 4% cap. At a 0.60 or 7, whatever it is, we don't have much wiggle room.
I understand.
Any other questions from the council? Do we have a motion to amend that number, or do we want to skip to the next line item?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I think we need to stand fast on the 434.
Okay, not hearing a motion to adjust that line item. Chief, it's back in your hands, and it just looks like the other. The increase is the other one is for the firefighter gear. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, you see at the bottom, we did self-contained breathing apparatus did go away.
Okay.
And at the 50,000, with the cost of gear every year going up, we currently have 6 recruits in a training right now, and at $2,500 a piece roughly to get them into gear, we eat up that account pretty quick.
Okay.
Doesn't leave us anything to keep the other firefighters' aging gear or damaged gear replaced. So it's just trying to give us a little more room to keep the members' gear up to date.
Okay, and the other one that's got an increase is for the details in the storm. Does that have to do with the hurricanes and the
Yeah.
snow and all of that?
Correct, falling short and not getting approved for FEMA money for that storm, hurricane caught us behind a little bit, so we're trying to not fall into that position again.
Did we not
if possible.
qualify for it?
We never, I'm sorry?
So the state didn't qualify for the hurricane that came through
We didn't
because
have enough damage in the state?
it seems that Providence County did not report much damage at all. My
Why a
suspicion is that the city of Providence did not
It
report.
cleaned up the streets in Central Falls.
So because of that, that county didn't meet the threshold, the entire state wasn't eligible for reimbursement. But we did apply for reimbursement for the blizzard. Unfortunately, that process is very long and it may be months before we discover what we're actually going to be reimbursed. I can tell you that the calculation for the blizzard, for our costs, for, from manning the stations to the cost of the salt and sand to the overtime, we were just over $99,000 for the 48-hour period that we had that snow event.
It's still not enough, we could eat that right up in one storm, but it gives us a little more cushion for the normal.
Okay.
storm coverage.
Any other questions from the council? Could you give me the new number for the total, bringing that $58,000 in instead of the 49,600?
Yeah, it's $1,005,912.
Could I have a motion to approve the fire safety operating expenses at that number that was just $1,005,912? Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 1,005,912 for the fire safety budget.
We have a motion,
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
Next up is police. Hello, chief.
Evening, how are you?
Good.
All
Okay,
right. So you gotta,
the floor is yours.
there you go.
Most of it here is a contractual agreement with the raises coming up. I think the one here that kind of stands out is the communication and maintenance contracts. What we did this year is we purchased, we had a lot of problems with our email. When we did our audit in April with the FBI audit, we found out that our email was not secured. And we went from .com to .gov, and worse than ever. So we are looking to upgrade to Office 365. And we have to buy a security system called the Barracuda. So that's one of the reasons that went up. We also are looking to purchase the barcode for the evidence room. I actually have that, a grant coming in for that, but the annual fee for the barcode is about $500 per year. So that's why I'm looking for the increase from 22,000 to the 36,456.
Okay, chief,
And one more thing that we also added, when we did contract negotiations, we talked about a detail tracking system, which is an app that sends out the details and overtime, because we do spend 2-3 hours a day, especially when we have, especially in the summertime, there's a lot of detail. So this way here, we send it out and the app, excuse me, automatically moves the officer or the constable on the list to the bottom of the list, advising that they have the detail so that we don't have to do that ourselves. So definitely going to save us some time.
Didn't we authorize that though? I thought
We authorized that in the contract negotiations, yes.
That's
Okay.
when it came.
You just haven't started it yet.
We just started March 1st.
Oh, well, very good. Yeah.
Chief, the question I have, the SRO officers, did we go up because the school committee the school department is not going to pay their half anymore?
So as you know, what happened was that the grant went away. So we met with the superintendent yesterday, actually, the chief and I met with superintendent. The total cost for that position on an annual basis is low end of 84,500, high end of 97,568, depending on whether they choose a single or a family plan. So under the existing SRO, the total cost for that is approximately $97,000, including benefits. So I told the superintendent that the line item that I had budgeted was 50,000. That was my initial estimate if we were to split the cost, and she indicated that the school department would pick up the remainder.
How come it was only 24 last year?
Because half of the cost was covered by a grant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, they paid half, we paid a quarter, and the school department paid a quarter. I should note that there is legislation that's been introduced this year to reestablish that grant program. Certainly, the superintendent indicated that if that program is reestablished, they would absolutely apply for it. And if we receive the grant, then we will not have to expend the full amount that's budgeted.
Any questions from the council?
I did have one question. Chief, your fuel bill is averaging $2.69 a gallon. I think that could double. So your line item is 51.5, and I mean, that could just double.
Yes, I did call the highway before when I did my budget, and I said, what are we getting for per gallon? They said 2.69, which is actually went up from.
Aren't we in a contract?
No, no.
Yeah, right now, yes, I agree. It'd go up.
So that could go up like significantly. You're using 20,000 gallons a year, and it's 2.69. It's like
We don't have a bulk purchase price. Where were we getting it for 2.69?
Well, we do get a bulk purchase
it's
price, but
not
we don't
locked-
have a
it's not like
contract.
heating oil.
Right,
You
right.
can't lock in.
It's not locked in.
It's not locked in,
But it's never been what's at the pump.
right, we always get a better price than retail. One thing that I will recommend this year, and it may result in savings and it may not. I think we should put fuel out to bid just to see what we get. In the past, I've seen that bring in a better price. We may not get a better price, but we can always reject the bids if we don't.
And we can.
But I
always-
do agree. I think this line, based on current circumstances, I think we do need to increase this line item.
I just think it's inevitable that there's no way it can stay there because gas prices are not going to dramatically drop in this next year. I don't see it.
Would you have it, what would you think is a fair number to keep this on budget, about 20,000? To bring it to 71, about roughly a little bit more than a third increase? That's roughly what we're seeing at the pump.
I think that would be a good placeholder. I mean, that would be a good budget figure to work with. Obviously, if gas prices remain where they are now or go higher, then we'll need to revisit this at some point.
Does that sound like a reasonable number for the council? You'd bring the 51.5 to 71.5?
Yeah, at least it gives us a little bit more.
Yep. Does that sound good?
Yeah, so we just changed that
Yeah,
2722.
could we have a motion to upgrade the line item for fuel/diesel to 71,500 from 51,500?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any other questions from the council?
Well, no, I don't know.
No? Okay, could you give me that new number with that? Oh, that's an easy one.
It's a
742,
42,
2,742,375 for police operating expenditures.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2,742,375 for the police operating costs. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, chief. Next on the agenda is Public Works. We have our new director coming up for the first time asking us for money.
Well, could we do dispatch and animal control? While we
I
have the
didn't see
chief?
that added there, but yes, we can do that while we have the chief up here. Sorry. Okay, chief, we're doing the dispatch first. I don't see anything way out of line. Any questions from the council?
Are you fully staffed on all your dispatches?
Yes,
Nice.
and we have one works per diem.
Oh, nice.
Not hearing any questions. Can we have a motion for a total of 316,663 for the dispatch?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And the next we have animal control. I don't see any large increases there. Is there any questions for the council on the animal control operating expenses?
I did have a question. Chief, we used to get reports about what was happening with animal control as far as number of animals. Not stop getting that.
I received them. If the council would like copies, I can certainly pass them along. I receive them every month.
It'd be nice for us to have an idea what's happening. When we're looking at these numbers.
Yep, lots of animals. I can certainly forward those. I receive them on a monthly basis.
Yeah, he does it on a monthly
Well,
basis.
you never know. Sure.
Okay, any other questions from the council? Okay, can we have a motion to approve animal control in the amount of 96,457?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have a new number now, right? For total public safety?
Yeah, but we're not doing the totals.
Okay.
We're gonna do them next week.
All right.
Next we have, now we can go to Public Works.
So Mr. Wheeler has been here for seven days?
7 days, you don't get any money.
A great 7 days.
Honeymoon.
So I actually put together the request with some input from the previous DPW director. Many of these line items I have not had a chance to discuss with Mr. Wheeler because he's still getting the lay of the land, obviously. The changes in salaries and clothing allowance, those are contractual. Trash collection is also contractual. Tipping fees, I am recommending remaining level on that account. While the over the cap tipping fee is going to increase next year, our cap should also increase due to the revised census numbers. So the way Rhode Island Resource Recovery used a projection previously that was formulated by Rhode Island Statewide Planning, which showed us reducing in population every year. So last year they had us under 10,000, 9,000, right around 9,600 residents is what they were using to calculate our cap. The census has since come up, we're over 11,000 residents. So that cap should have a significant adjustment based on the actual number. So my projection is that the existing tipping fee should be adequate, assuming that we continue our downward trajectory that we've been experiencing with a lessening of trash and an increase in recycling. So again, we're going to have to continue to be vigilant with that and work hard on education, because if we have an increase in trash and a decrease in recycling, then that's a significant financial impact.
Kate, the part-time wages and salaries, was that for the summer help?
That is the summer help. And the last couple of years, last year, obviously, we didn't hire for those positions because of COVID, because all those positions need to share trucks and it wasn't feasible. The last year that we did have the program in place, we had a very limited number of applicants, and it was not a well-attended program. I anticipate that this year, again, we're still kind of in an uncertain place with COVID, so it's a good year to reorganize with the new director and come back with kind of a revamped summer program in the future.
Okay, and the other item I have is the same thing Councilman Hecker brought up on the
fuel.
On the fuel, we should probably be increasing that, kick that up 20. It's roughly the same number as what the police were using. So.
Right, we have two fuel accounts under DPW. One is for the transfer station and one is for general public works.
Which one is, I know for the trucks that work around town, is the other one for the truck to go up to Johnston and back?
Correct.
Probably should bump that up, what, a third, say another $4,000 on that one. I don't know, what's the council think?
Why are those separated? Is there a reason?
Well,
It's out of
previously,
the same tank, doesn't it?
It does. Transfer station previously was handled as an enterprise account, and there was some thought at one point about reestablishing that as an enterprise account.
So there was a reimbursement or there was a cost coming out of that?
It originated from when it was a shared service with the town of Barrington.
All right. Shouldn't we just combine them? Why keep them separate if it's?
That has got the utility, that would be just like the gas and stuff, the gas and heat, is that's the account it's in with. I think they probably put them together because we had to split the cost, right?
Well, no, they were separate based on the billables because Barrington was funding a percentage of the diesel.
Okay.
So now if it's all coming out of the same tank, why bother having two line items? You know what I'm saying? Like even if we
Right.
increase one, we
Just
increase
keep
the other, it's the same
Right,
tank.
we'll still have a line for items for utilities, but the fuel diesel will all be in the same account.
I think we should consolidate, get rid of one.
Kate, out of that utilities slash fuel, that 13,148, how much of that is fuel, do we know?
I don't know. We'd have to,
Yeah, maybe.
I could do some
Come up
legwork
with
and find
next-
out.
Next budget hearing, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so what would the council like to do on the line item for just basically the fuel diesel at this time?
You mean the public works fuel diesel?
Yes, yep.
I think we should increase it by at least 10.
Okay, can we have a motion for what we want to settle on?
I'll second his motion.
I'll make a motion that we increase the Public Works fuel and diesel line item from 48,000 to 58,000.
Okay. And the other one we'll leave the same, and then we can probably bust that out or add to that once we get what the actual fuel cost is.
Yes.
Once we get it separated, then we can add maybe a 25% to that number next budget hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the new number with, that's another easy
I
one
will
with it.
second the motion.
Okay, a motion and a second to increase to 58,000.
Well,
The fuel cost for Public Works?
right, but one question I have though is when we separate it, aren't we just going to have it, in other words, the increase is in the diesel. So when we separate, it'll just be utilities for transfer.
Right, but once we get the number of how much of that 13 is for fuel,
That goes into the other one.
that goes into the other line item, and then we may want to increase it a little bit more because of
I got you, but
the
I'm-
20% in there.
But we are just gonna go with the one line item.
Yes,
Yeah, all right,
yes,
good,
yep.
thanks.
Okay,
58 is just a placeholder for now. It's
yep, so we have a motion and a second to increase from 48,000 to 58,000, the fuel slash diesel line. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye. That, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question in regards to the percentages for the salaries. Those are all contractual because there's 5 1/4, 5.26, and then there's the 2. And then there's, I thought I saw something else. Yeah, 4.55, but the foreman salary isn't contractual, right?
Yes, so the foreman salary, that's also a union salary.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
The foreman was in the union.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, yeah,
So
that was part of the contract change, right?
it was the previous contract,
Previous one.
not this
Okay.
one.
So again, my question's valid, and those represent 2 calendar years
Correct.
because all right, thank you.
Any other questions on operating for Public Works? Can I have the new number with that increase?
I don't have it.
2405833. Could I have a motion for the new number for the total for Public Works operating?
Was it 2405?
2405833.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve for the Public Works operating for 2022, $2,405,833.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks. Honeymoon's over.
We might even be over the 4% now.
Okay, town clerk has to go last because she wants to take everything that's left.
Sandy, are you going to stay there?
Is it okay if I stay here?
As long as you're speaking to the microphone.
Absolutely. So I've increased the canvass's expense by $11,000 and election officials' pay by $13,000 during this budget cycle. Since there is a scheduled election in 2022 and a 14 days early voting, Board of Canvassers must budget for a special election or referendum should circumstances arise. Document management line item stays the same to cover the cost of codifying, maintaining the zoning ordinance, town code, charter amendments from Unicode. Document preservation line item will be utilized for clerk-based charges to manage town council agenda minutes and related documents. Indexing and recording line items will be utilized to cover profile recording technology. This line item will also cover the costs for our online map availability. Real estate sales have increased in the last year, therefore I've increased the revenue line items, which are relatively now anyway, that's my revenue. I did include in my budget an additional full-time position. I was given 78,315, but then looking at all my numbers and everything that I had and thinking about the part-time positions of that one person for the 25 hours, through the week that I had mentioned. I thought about a full-time, I really did, and I really want it and I really need it. The only thing is if I'm gonna take municipal court, I'm just gonna give myself more work. And we already are. We have a lot of work. We are the hub of the town. Everything comes in and out of that office. But that's fine. I am fine with a full-time that I can at least keep her every day from 10 to 3 every day and try to, move along and then keep her or use her for elections a little bit longer when I need her.
Well, I think just to clarify what I heard the council say, that we'll come back with more details. Under what I'm going to revise, municipal court would stay municipal court as it is now with their part-time municipal court clerk, not part of the town clerk's office. The part-time floating clerk would still exist as is, and that part-time floating clerk is primarily assigned to the town clerk's office, but having to float out occasionally as other needs arise throughout the town hall. And then there would be another part-time position who's assigned solely to the town clerk's office, who would work in that office the hours that are needed by the town clerk.
Or if need be, put
Absolutely.
where I was coming from before, and I don't speak clearly. If you need 2 part-timers in there, get 2. If you need 3, get 3. My point on the hiring of a contracted position is to make sure that we're satisfying the workload. And if you need 5, get 5 part-timers. Once you put one person in, financially, it's much higher than a part-time person. And if the workload isn't carried, now we've hired somebody that we're never going to get rid of contractually, that position. And then you may need a part-time person down the road. That's where I was going with the really trying and feel like I am in no doubt. I am in no way disagreeing with your need. Get 2 part-timers in there, get 3. Whatever you guys come back with us, it's going to be just a dollar figure that represents the workload. It's not going to be benefits, everything else that goes along with it. That's where I'd rather utilize that funding until we know exactly what it is. You may need 2 more full-time people next year. I don't know.
And I'll work with the town clerk over the next week.
To come back for
Yeah.
next budget hearing.
We give them an opportunity to.
And that's
Joe,
fine.
You're saying 2 part-timers is less expensive than 1 full-time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because of all the
Benefits.
Residuals.
benefits and so that's,
And
you're locked in.
no, the other way you're locked in. If we add that full-time
It becomes
person,
a union
That's right,
position.
that's
You're
it.
locked into that, yeah.
So I definitely say,
And that's
let's
fine.
lighten your workload.
And that's why I was thinking about taking municipal court, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, then that means it's a responsibility that everybody in my office has. So now there's nighttime meetings. So now that's a union position. Why can't any other union person in this building, why does it have to only be my position? Are you gonna direct just my office because it comes out of my office? That's gonna be a union position if I had a full-time. So now that it's part-time, it won't be, and she stays where she is, and then I end up with 2 or whatever Kate decides.
Okay. And Sandy, the redistricting is done. That's why it's not a
It
line
is.
item this year. Okay.
We are pretty much, we were here Friday with them, with the Board of Canvas, and we're going Thursday to find out moving St. Mary's to Mary V. Quirk, but we're not sure. The state's coming down to see if it's ADA compliant. But we'll find out.
I have another question if I could.
Absolutely.
Ms. Mishu, if you, what time do our employees come into town hall?
8:30.
8:30. So if you had somebody that worked from 8:30 until 12, and then somebody who works 12:30 until what?
4:30.
4:30. The two part-time people, you have somebody in the office full-time.
Correct.
That can be done that way, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's legally all okay.
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean,
Okay.
again, we'd have to come back to the council with some more details, but that's certainly something we can look at.
Want to make sure I'm not thinking out, inappropriately, but that's where I'm coming from.
So this bottom line could change. It's quite pretty.
This one could
significant.
change along with the manager's bottom line because that's where we had that one part-timer in there, right?
Right. I
Or
think
that
the
one
overall
full-timer.
impact would
Yep.
be negligible.
Yep.
If, this reorganization would not add cost. It may actually reduce it slightly, but we'll look at it and come back to the council.
So how do we move forward on this?
Well,
I think you just remove that line item, the 29078, maybe just hold off on that for the moment. The rest of it shouldn't be impacted.
So pull that out.
Correct.
I would pull that out for now.
Can we have a motion to remove the $29,078 for town clerk wages and salaries dash union?
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now any other questions on the operating expenses for the town clerk? We have it.
Yes.
Okay.
Fung was worried we were taking this out completely, but my understanding was we're taking it out for the moment so we can reconsider it at the next meeting.
Correct, when we come up with because we also removed your request for full-time and we're gonna come back at that. Do
Right.
we have a new number with that change? 328, 300 or 200?
What is it?
328299.
Can you provide us with new printouts for next? Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion for the operating expenses for town clerk in the amount of $328,299?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next we have grants and contributions.
We're doing that
We're
next
doing it
week.
next week?
Oh, all right, you want to do this next week?
I think we're done.
All right, yeah, because they're supposed to come in. Okay, we'll do that next week. Yeah, it's still kind of, do we want to get into capital at this time? Do we want to,
According to our agenda, we're moving into capital next.
okay,
Could we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, let's take a 5-10 minute recess.
Did you get the hot tub? It does have that.
The first request on that item is for the Heritage Day, which is not a town function, so that would be a grant. The second request for the entrance sign, my understanding is that would be a town project. So that would have to go into capital.
Under which part of capital, transportation and infrastructure?
I guess I was looking to try to figure that out, and I think that's probably the closest fit. Yeah, that's where it would fit.
So we'll
pull that up, yeah.
pull it up first, so you can have it. Thanks.
What the heck was that?
Okay. That's what Anne Marie
All
wanted,
right.
so I passed them out to
Thank you.
everybody. Okay, let's open this back up, and next we're moving to capital. And first on the capital is transportation and infrastructure. We did have something that was added, it was put in grants and contributions, but it is more appropriate for capital budget, and that is for signage. And that's under, you'll find the backup documentation right in front of the capital grants and contributions tab. And that is a proposal from the town entrance signs in the amount of $10,000, and it is submitted by the ad hoc study committee. It's not included anywhere on the line items, but Mr. Weed, would you like to come up and speak to that?
So this is a request that initially came last year with the American Indian Study Committee to replace the existing town entrance signs that say "Welcome to Warren" with ones that we're proposing, ones that recognize our Native American heritage here, and talk about the Massasoit. This is the home of the Massasoit. We know that for sure. He's reburied here in Burrs Hill, and we think it's a significant way of identifying the town and its heritage. And by having entrance signs that simply say, "Welcome to Warren, home of the Massasoit, who welcomed the Pilgrims in 1621." I think that would be a powerful statement, something that would have potential economic benefits in terms of bringing in tourism dollars and help to educate both adults and children in this town as to our heritage. I've gotten a ballpark figure from Tony DePoto. He thinks in the range of $1,000 per sign, but that was pre-COVID a couple of years ago. And I would think that $10,000 would cover the amount. It may be somewhat less than that. We'll know when we get the final rendering. But that requires some design work as well. And then his work. So the 1,000 per sign and then design work on top of that, we're probably talking closer to the 10,000. That's for 5 instances. I think that's in your paperwork there. The both ends of Main Street and then Metacom, which we do not have a sign on Metacom when people come in. And the sign up on Market Street, the one with the well, okay, and one over on Schoolhouse.
Any questions from the council?
I do.
Joe?
I would like to take the opportunity to relocate where the current locations are. I don't know if they're ideal. I think that they've just been there because that's where they've always been. I wouldn't mind taking a look at that. I also wouldn't mind looking at a design review I'm not thrilled. I mean, what we have now is been a carryover of what we've always had. So that was the format they used. It was just always put in. If we're going to add language, if we're going to look at any, and we are adding language, I would hate to see us use the same format with more language. So I think, I have no problem with attaching the increase in funding for that line item, but I really do think we need to look at this process a little bit in detail.
So in other words, what you're thinking is maybe add it, the $8,000 line item, but pending review of the council before final design?
Of the whole process.
Right.
I think when you drive in, again, they're where they are just because that's where they always were. There may be a better spot. There may not be, but I would love to actually, once we have,
You have to consider town land.
oh, that's easy because we can get state land. We can get the approval. I mean, we do have the approval. It's not town land. So when you think about the whole process, and you'll absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, when we're going to have a size, when we're going to have our design, we're going to have all of that, then looking at how it fits in. I think that should be important.
It is, and I think we need to coordinate with Mr. Rulli, who's also proposed some signage, directional signage.
Overall, and because we just had the discussion about the
It
parking.
needs to at least to be compatible.
It
with
should
that.
all fit in.
Right.
And I even think we should go as far as looking at the language.
Yep.
I'm not positive that I think, home of the Massasoit, I don't know. I kind of look at, Soames. This was Soames. So I think that the funding increase is great. I think we should continue and ask you to continue with the input that you have over the years.
We'd be happy to bring members of the study committee back to.
Keep the
work with
discussion
town,
going, to
keep-
really make
right.
it go there and be nice and well thought out. Versus again, just, I'm not gonna say knee jerk, but all right, we've increased the funding, we've changed it, and now it's gonna go right back to where it was.
The project doesn't
Design.
need to be rushed. But if we have a year to work on this, I think we can get it done.
And I guess the question is, who make up the decision makers?
Us.
The town council.
The final approval
the
of town
proposal-
council.
But the proposal's coming from this.
American Indian Study
Because, there's people that are more, well, let's say more adept at sign design, that, you understand the language that
Sure.
that you want to put there, but as far as the design and the placement is another whole ball too.
And we could certainly consult with Karen Dion around signage design. She's done a lot of it.
I have faith that if we put out our request as this is just a monetary attachment. This is the budget. I think we should expand this to be a request for proposals. Maybe not in the marketing world, but to our committee, to our manager, to all of those who want to bring it forward. And then ultimately, remember, this is the name of the town, the branding of the town. And as Mr. What do they call you? Dave. As he pointed out, it's Dr. Weed, as he pointed out, it's, going to be attached to the town of Warren. And, I think it's important. I think it's more than just leaving it up to happenstance.
I agree that, I think that placement is very important and the actual design to look appropriate and clarify that, all of that is really important. So it's a little bit longer term process.
I mean, I'm not saying that's not what you may have thought of. I'm just making sure that it is included and it is what, at least, again, as I try to do up here,
Well, we could
argue in a
certainly
positive
come back
manner.
In the coming months with a specific proposal and maybe some alternatives. And have some.
Sure.
All right, so at this point, let's, Kate?
Just, and I don't mean to be contrary, but I just want to make a couple comments. This is just my opinion based on what, what my job is here. At least one of our signs is practically brand new. So that's a concern for me that we're replacing signs that we just put up. The one at the North Pump Station is, a year old. I also have concerns with creating a tagline using our Native American heritage as a tourism
Right, I didn't like that
slogan.
either.
I have serious concerns about that. I think if we do acknowledge the Pokanoket history, it's important that we bring the Pokanoket voices into that decision before using them as a tourism slogan. That is a great concern for me. I also think we should involve the Arts and Cultural Commission if there's a rebranding of town signs. That group has obviously a lot of graphic design knowledge, and I think that they would be a valuable partner in any type of revisions to the town entrance signs. So those would be my recommendations.
I don't think you're contrarian at all. I think you're bringing up exactly the points that I was trying to make, and you did it in a better way, more specific, because that's kind of where I was coming from, because it was a little bit eerie to hear you say that, it's going to be an economic driver. So we stole the land from them, and now we're going to advertise that it used to be theirs. It's not really where
Yeah, all right. So at this point, basically, what we should be deciding right now is whether or not we want to add the $8,000
motion to
to,
approve.
we have a motion to add the $8,000 under transportation infrastructure, create a new line item for historic signage. What would we classify that?
Entrance
as?
signs?
Entrance signs.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments from the council? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. So do we have any other questions? You're all set
I'll be back next week.
for the grants and contributions.
Thank you, Dr.
Yep.
Reed.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have anything else under the transportation infrastructure that we want to look at, amend, change? We did have our 5-year plan in front of us here that's showing what we did.
So we're about to launch into a new 5 years, and admittedly, you don't have a list in front of you because we were waiting for the new DPW director on board to get on board before we refine that list. This is a year that we're going to have to rebid road paving. We're also going to have to rebid curbing and sidewalks. So this is going to be kind of a regrouping year for those projects. We have a number of requests in. Obviously every year we could spend $1 million on each of those line items and still not be done. I was trying to hit a target with capital so that we could fund out of reserves and we would not have to borrow this year. So this is the amount that I thought that we could budget this year without overextending ourselves. That would allow us to get some engineering and prep work done, tackle some of the immediate needs, and then launch forward into a new 5-year improvement list that we could begin work on. So this is a budget request, but this is not the last that you will hear of this. And there will be decisions that will need to be made over the next year as to where we're going to go with these expenditures and future expenditures. And a lot of it's going to depend on where the bids come in per ton placed and per linear foot on these items.
And the increase in diesel impacts the increase in asphalt.
Yes.
Just for reference, last year, we spent $475,000 on road paving and $289,000 on curbing and sidewalks. That's just a point of information. It's not saying one thing or the other. So how does the council feel on the proposed numbers for the transportation and infrastructure? Do we feel it's enough compared to what we spent last year? Do we feel? I don't know. Question? Okay.
Wait a minute, because this is the 5-year plan. We're now on. Right.
Yeah, that's the completion of the 5-year plan.
Great. No, that's it. Yeah. Right, yeah, thank you. Well, the more we add, a little here, a little there, a little everywhere. I mean, I think we need to wait until the numbers are presented again before we see where we're at, 4%, if we're going to use it out of the general fund. I mean, right now, as Misha said, yeah, sure, I'd love to increase it all, but we've already made increases and there wasn't much wiggle room there.
Right. So are we comfortable with this?
Can I just
300?
ask a real quick question? Absolutely. How many roads are tapped to be repaved this cycle?
So this cycle, we've actually gone through the road paving list that we were working on. So we need to come up with a new road paving list.
Okay.
And again, that's going to depend on where those bids come in, because that's going to depend how many feet of roadway basically we can get done. There's a number of roads that we've received requests for So certainly we can prioritize those with the new DPW director, and depending on what we get for bids, we can come back to the council with a recommendation on the actual program for repaving, but I don't have that information right now.
And the only reason why I ask is that the current price right now for crude oil, because asphalt is tied hand in hand with crude oil, we'd be lucky if we were able to pave a 2x2 section. Yeah.
Right.
So no one could ever have anticipated having a contingency plan for this, so we probably need to come up with some type of a contingency plan.
Right. My recommendation would be to use at least a portion of these funds for engineering and planning, once we have a unit price. And then next year, I anticipate that we're going to have to go out to bond if we're going to do any significant infrastructure improvements. For roadway projects, we're eligible for Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank funding, which is typically around 33% below market for rates. With the infrastructure money that's becoming available through the federal government at the end of calendar year 2022, there's a possibility we could also tap those funds. So in an ideal world, we could take at least a portion of this $100,000 for road paving and $200,000 for curbing and use that as match money and leverage it for, potentially a larger pool of
With a
money.
wide array of guidelines for opera funds, there could be a potential.
So typically under ARPA, road paving and curbing and sidewalks are not eligible expenses. The only time that you can fund those through ARPA is if you're using revenue replacement funds, and then you have wider discretion on what you're funding. You could use them if it was associated with a stormwater improvement, but it would have to be, an engineered and planned project that currently we don't have in the tank.
Maybe it's wait for the recommendation.
Yeah, now, Kate, you said that the funding for the infrastructure will be available at the end of this calendar year or fiscal year?
Calendar year, which would take us about midway through the next fiscal year.
Right, so if we only have $100,000 in there for their match or whatever it is, would that put us at a disadvantage, or would we have time to increase for the next year's budget and use that to cap it, to get more grant money that way? Would we have time to do that?
I think we would. I mean, we can always come back to the council with reallocation requests as well. So, it was a difficult year to put a number to these items. But I do anticipate that, taking this year kind of as a regrouping year, we'll be able to have a more robust program moving forward with the new DPW director once he gets acquainted. And hopefully the prices on asphalt will, obviously they're spiking now. Hopefully they'll settle down in the future.
When you're looking at your estimates, is it feasible to identify problem spots? Like, let's say we have a street that's on the list, but we have a 25 square foot section that's horrendous. Can we, without going out to bid, if it's under 5,000, can't we do spot repairs, or are all streets included in the cumulative?
So we can do spot repairs, but you can't break up a job to stay under that $5,000 limit, or it's actually $10,000 under the state purchasing.
So a spot repair isn't breaking up a job then?
Right. So you could do spot repairs, yes.
So when you come back to us, and it would be a great way for, is it Mr. Wheeler to get connected to the roads if he hasn't already, identify sections, because one thing that I find is becoming really horrible is at all of our crosswalk intersections. So we have so much, there have been so many repairs to the infrastructure, not by town people. So they only have to put it back to the condition it was in. Perfect example is right at the top of Joy Street. So you have a crosswalk right there, and you've got 10 feet of horrible pavement. Then when you're looking at a lot of the roads, same thing. You may have an old repair that wasn't done properly, and now it's a horrible spot, but the rest of the road. So is that something that you've thought of, or can you think of?
Yeah, I can certainly work with Mr. Wheeler. He does have experience in.
I mean, if it's a 25 foot, you can measure that out, and you kind of add them all up, and we may have, 50 spots in town that require repair, but yet won't be. You could come up with that price. I think that'd be worth looking at.
Mr. Wheeler will also be meeting with National Grid to review their repair requests and the standards to which they are expected to restore their patches, which is not always adequate.
Yeah, the emergency repair of the gas on water is already destroyed, so write that down.
Yeah, I sent the standards to National Grid the next day to remind them of the standards of repair. We have several locations where
Thank you.
need to be reminded, and
I don't
I'm-
want to digress.
Mr.
Maybe the
Wheeler
new
will follow
owners
up.
of National Grid will be more receptive. Okay, that being said, what would the council like to do with the capital for transportation and infrastructure? The requested amount is $300,000.
Motion to approve right now.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the capital amount of $300,000 for transportation and infrastructure. All in favor?
Oh, plus,
Aye.
Are
plus
we
the
adding
eight,
eight?
right? Yeah.
300.
Correct. The new number is $308,000. Correct. Is that motion amended to 308?
Oh,
Okay.
that's where the sign is going?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
For the amount of $308,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, we have harbor and waterfront infrastructure, town wharf. Basically, we don't have the $3.5 million request for the town wharf bulkhead project, which that would put us over the 4%. So basically, the only thing we have under that is $200,000 for a new patrol boat. Harbor master had left.
I think he had a
Oh, that's
call.
right. He had a meeting.
Okay.
So the information is in your packet
Mhm.
regarding the boat that he's requesting. And just to review the Town Wharf Bulkhead project, obviously that's an important project. Not only can we not include it under the cap, but we also couldn't borrow for that amount. We don't have enough. We don't have the ability to take out a $3.5 million bond this year. So we're going to have to continue to work on figuring out how to fund that because it is not something we can put off forever. But unfortunately, it's not financially feasible for us this year.
Kate, just on that right there, would there be any grant money? Could that be part of the infrastructure? It is a dock.
Actually, originally it's in the past, we applied for transient forward grant from U.S. Fisheries. Bristol staff, that's when they worked with staff, that's when they. That program.
Okay, good. All right, so all we have under harbor and water infrastructure is $200,000 for a new patrol boat.
But you guys want to hear anything on it?
It's in the packet here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to take 240 days to get it. The one we have now is old, so I don't know if you read it all, but. All right.
But yeah, I just don't, it's probably gonna take 240 days to get almost any boat right now, you know?
Well, this one's made in Louisiana and, that's, I
Yeah.
mean, if you guys read it, you know it all. That's
Yeah, I
it.
mean, I don't really see any other options at this point.
No.
So,
Other than that, just not doing it, but that's
Yep.
just gonna,
Essentially, we replace what we have and
and going with
Correct.
the aluminum is gonna be a lot longer, duration of value,
lifespan, yeah.
lifespan.
The harbor master did do a significant amount of research, I know, before making this request. I'm sure if you have questions, he could come back next week, but, he looked at what surrounding communities are using. He's trying to be cost conscious and this boat he thought would meet the needs of the town in the most sustainable way and have, like you said, a longer lifespan. The boat that he is using, I can't remember exactly how old it is, but it's
I think
quite old.
it's 16 years old.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It does get a lot of use.
Okay, so we have an amount of $200,000 requested by Harbor and Waterfront on capital. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve harbor and water infrastructure capital in the amount of $200,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have stormwater drainage infrastructure improvement.
Now, again, I see all these line items as potential grant matches. Stormwater permitting and compliance is something that we're required to do by law. So that account we utilize for the process we have to go through with DEM, which has gotten more rigorous recently. So I expect we'll need the full 25,000. Coastal resilience and townwide improvements, those can both potentially be grant matches or, as you said, spot projects. The townwide improvements project tends to go towards things that we haven't budgeted for elsewhere as far as infrastructure. You know, a light pole gets knocked over or a tree needs to be planted. It's the fill-in account, but both those accounts are also eligible as grant match, and we could leverage them with the new, certainly there's coastal resilience money that's going to become available. So we could turn that $25,000 into something much bigger to address some of our needs for coastal resilience.
The non-fund, the lines that like Hale Street, Norbert, Warren, because they don't have anything attached to them, what does that mean?
That means they've already been funded and they're in process.
That's what I was hoping. All right, good. And they're not done yet.
Correct.
All right, that's different than zero.
Hale Street is done. So Hale Street is complete. That was a full sidewalk, street and stormwater project. And it's actually a really neat project because the stormwater is underground infiltration under the sidewalk. So if you're walking through that area, it's a pretty unique system and it works very well.
Great. Great. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a total of $150,000 for stormwater drainage infrastructure improvements. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Next, we have town buildings.
So the wiring improvements for Government Center and Town Hall, both of those are to redo the cabling in both the buildings. We now have fiber connections going to both Town Hall and Government Center, but the cabling within the building is old and confusing. We have old cables, new cables, inactive cables, active cables, all running through the ceilings throughout the buildings. So what this would do would be rip out everything that's obsolete and unused and then replace everything with modern cabling so that we can fully realize the speed increases associated with the fiber service that's now coming to the buildings.
Isn't it cheaper just to leave the inadequate cables in place and run the new ones? Or look
Slightly.
into that? Or no,
We
you didn't?
did, I mean, that might save a couple bucks, but we're running into this circumstance where someone goes in and needs to, we have so much old cabling that when someone comes in to do a repair or to fix something.
Locating the right cable.
Right, it's costing us more to have things fixed because they have to spend so much time
You
trying to
looked at
figure it
that,
out.
so
We did, we
that's a
looked at
great
that.
answer. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And we still have not realized like the full benefit of having the fiber.
Right, so
because of this.
we certainly have better reliability, we have less dropouts, but we won't realize the full speeds
yeah.
until we update our own cabling within the building.
Okay.
I put kind of a placeholder line item in for DPW facility improvements. Mr. Wheeler, I have a feeling will be coming back with a bigger number in future years, but this at least will get him started with the ability to do some renovations within that building. It needs some work. We're going to try to leverage that money again. If there's lighting improvements that need to be made, HVAC improvements that need to be made, we'll be working to see what incentives are available to see if we can get as much done with grant money as possible, but there is going to be some town money required to fix the place up a bit. And then building department, security and office upgrades. I believe Mr. Kalenda brought this up earlier. This line item is needed to increase the security in that office and to create a better experience for the user. So that the idea is to have a window. Am I still on? Yeah. To have a window in the hallway. And that way someone can walk up for service rather than kind of wandering into the office and basically you can walk just right into the middle of the office and the clerks. And it's a bit confusing for the user. This way it'll create a more secure, better experience for the visitor to that office and for the staff.
Could that possibly be linked to any COVID money for safety reasons to keep the infected people outside?
We can look at that potential.
Well, no, this was, because I know where I work, when this all started, they put plexiglass, because we had like half counters, but they just put plexiglass all the way up and put the little holes in it, and that ended up being, I believe, all paid for with COVID money, so.
We do have plexiglass up in the office. Unfortunately, there's big wide open spaces, so,
We
you
found
know.
out that didn't work.
Yeah, it works if someone's standing, I guess, directly in front of the plexiglass, but most of the time
Okay.
they're not. But certainly we can look at that.
All right, so we have, any questions for the council on that capital for town buildings in the amount of $105,000?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second to approve capital for town buildings in the amount of $105,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Parks and Rec.
So again, Ms. Thibodeau had to leave for the recreation meeting, so I don't know if you want to wait for next week to ask her to participate or,
Did we change any of her numbers?
yes, I changed a lot of them. The bulk of her requests were regarding Veterans Field. First of all, it's a very large number. And second of all, I don't feel that we have an actual plan to work off of at this time. We have a drainage
Okay.
study that gives a number of recommendations, but we don't actually have a plan. So what I'm proposing, and again, we can discuss it with her president if you prefer, is to use this as grant match money and also for engineering and permitting, so we can create a comprehensive plan to renovate Veterans Field and to improve the drainage, not just put a Band-Aid on the field and have the problem happen again.
I would prefer continuing this to the next meeting where the rec director can come in and either defend or support her requests.
Agreed.
We have a motion. Oh, we don't need a motion. We're just going to continue that till next month, till next meeting, excuse me. Okay, next we have public safety, and it's the police department for equipment replacement plan. I don't see anything under that.
No, everything's, if you go down to public safety, that's where all the next page is where you'll see the police department items are under public safety, equipment replacement.
Okay, so that fire department skips down there as well.
Yep.
And then we have harbor management, and that's all down there, so. Okay, so here we go. So we have equipment replacement. Public Works is the first one online.
So I'd just like to say that Scott Almeida put together a lot of the documentation on these capital requests, and I think he did a really excellent job considering he'd never done this before. You know, he was very thorough in putting together his requests with the understanding that, you know, obviously we can't fund absolutely everything that we'd like to fund, and this is a really good starting place for our next 5-year capital plan. Based on discussions that I had both with Scott and with Jan previously, I prioritized the things that I think can't wait and included those in my request, but certainly Mr. Wheeler may have additional thoughts.
Mr. Wheeler, I know you've only been here 7 days, but is there anything, you see any hills you want to die on over here?
Not at the moment. I think what the town manager is requesting is appropriate. I took a tour of everything today to make sure I kind of had an idea, but the transfer trailer we need a new transfer trailer. It's rotting away. It's any day now that you're gonna have pieces.
An axle step.
Well, it better stay there till July.
We can make it last till July.
Any other questions from the council?
What exactly is the facility lift? What's that with the lift inside for working on the vehicles?
Correct. One of our maintenance lifts is no longer operational, so
Alright.
replacing it is a necessity.
So all of those other items that were requested, saying really need to not.
Right. I mean, they are needed, but I think they need to wait. One item that is needed sooner rather than later is the DPW fire alarm system replacement. I don't have a cost on that, but we do have previous year capital for DPW facility repairs and improvements. I would prioritize spending the previous capital money that we have remaining on that line item once we know what it's going to cost, but we don't have a number on that at the moment.
is there any way we can at least take it under consideration? Because we did receive some serious complaints about the sidewalk plowing. I noticed you got the V plow in, but then you've taken it out. I mean, if we don't have that V plow to do the sidewalks, what are we using?
Buy something a few years ago that
Right.
that does the
Little
sidewalks?
Bobcat.
Right,
Yeah.
this is the attachment for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
This-
because
This is the attachment for that piece of equipment.
the problem we're having is the equipment that we have right now is having a tough time negotiating around telephone poles and other obstacles on the sidewalk.
Right, and to be perfectly transparent, there are still areas that will not be able to be maneuvered with this machine. I think one of the primary complaints was about Medicom Avenue. And even with the equipment attachment, there would still be areas of Medicom Avenue that we would not be able to do with this. Actually, one whole side of the street, we would not be able to do with this equipment because of the placement of the telephone poles.
Telephone poles.
That
There-
seems ridiculously high for just the attachment for the front of a Bobcat. 25 grand for a V plow? That's,
I think it's purpose built for that machine. That's why it's such an increased price, yeah.
wow.
That's about 3 times the amount of like a regular standard Fisher HD. But it's also purpose built to do just exactly that, just those sidewalks.
There is a bill, again, not to go back to the legislature, but a bill has been introduced this year. There's 2 bills that have been introduced. One of the bills would exempt DOT, Rhode Island DOT, from clearing snow on state roads, which
So who's gonna do
I've
it?
never seen them do it ever.
No, we actually cite
Um,
them in Pawtucket if they don't do with like over the overpasses and stuff. Yeah.
So they don't touch state roads in Warren, the sidewalks. They,
Oh,
to
yeah,
my
no, they don't
knowledge,
touch the
they
sidewalk.
never have, but they do in other communities, I've heard. So one of the other bills that was introduced would require DOT to remove snow on state roads, which would be great for us because that is a big job. So I don't know if either bill has any chance of passing or what the impact would be on us, but both bills are currently pending in the legislature.
One other thing that we have to take this opportunity now to refresh our memories next year. All of the commercial properties that are on Medicom that hire contractors, they all hire contractors to move their snow. They plow it to the sidewalk. So I think we need to really start that process now and get it out there. You look at the length of job lot, you look at the length of Burger King, CVS, all of that, that whole length, they're responsible for clearing the sidewalks.
So one of the other issues is that DOT does the same thing. So, DOT, there's no shoulder on Medicom. So they plow all the snow onto the sidewalk. So that's an issue. I mean, the blizzard that we had, there was and they're plowing snow that's full of sand and salt. And basically, even if it's light fluffy snow, by the time it lands on the sidewalk, it's slush and ice and hard as a rock.
But the process of giving somebody a fine takes months. So we have storms. I think we should take that to you're the building inspector. How would it work? You send them
We have, well,
they didn't do it, then
we
we
would,
take them to
we
court.
would need, I don't believe we have the same ordinance in Warren that we have, that I use in Pawtucket, but in Pawtucket, you have 12 hours of daylight after the storm stops to clear your sidewalk, regardless if it's this concrete or even if it's just grass. If you don't have a concrete sidewalk, it's just grass, you still are responsible to clear it.
We have that.
Okay, and what we do is 12 hours, I send my inspectors out. We concentrate around the schools and the busy areas. And it's an automatic summons where, they take a picture, you didn't shovel, the 12 hours is up. It's a $25 fine first offense, $50 fine second offense, and commercial is the opposite. Is more expensive. It's $50 first offense, $100 second offense. And it's basically, it's a ticket that says if you pay it, fine. If not, it's an automatic summons. You have to come into court and you can make your case with the judge, but it's kind of hard to argue when there's picture evidence that this is 12 hours after and look at your sidewalk, it's not shoveled. So we do it immediately, 12 hours after the storm.
What always kills me over there is that you have paid people doing it.
Right.
It's not like Mr. CVS is out there shoveling. We're adding to his burden.
And we also have precautions for the older people. We have a list. And there's also a list that I think Senior Services sets up where they get volunteers for shoveling. So they can identify the elderly people or the people that are disabled that have trouble. And there is a mechanism to kind of help them out instead of just going out and charging them $25.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem is that you have homeowners that just, literally, they can't shovel their own sidewalks and you say, well, okay, they should hire someone. Well, it's a conundrum.
Right.
It's a real issue. I mean,
Because the Medicom was actually, I don't know if it was just sent to me or I don't know, but I went and visited. I didn't think of taking pictures. I should have. But I didn't. But when I got there, I realized, oh, CVS, they plowed it right through the sidewalk. So, you know, it is something that we should do.
If we have the ordinance,
Before
it's
it-
just gonna be a matter of
before it snows.
enforcing it, you know, that would be it.
It's
you know.
not for, I think just a letter now saying, you know, you're responsible.
Well, also part of that ordinance is, I think it's in October or November, the city, part of the ordinance requires the city to put an ad in the local paper informing people of their responsibility to clear the sidewalks, and it lists the things, and it also lists the number to call if you believe you need assistance or this or that. That's all part of the ordinance, is that has to be put in the paper every year before snow season, so.
So one of the issues I'll have to check is our ordinance only applies to what we define as the compact area of town. And I'm not sure that that includes Medicom. So,
All right, so we do have some policy work to do between now and the next snowfall. Good.
yes.
All right, numbers.
Okay, back to the B plow.
Oh, yeah,
No,
next year.
just, I was thinking out loud because we were
Yeah.
dealing with it, so.
Yep.
Try to be
Yeah,
proactive.
I just think that's, I don't know, I think we could find a better price than that. To me, that's almost, geez, a Bobcat's only like 38 grand. You're paying 25 just for the attachment? So I just think that number's extremely high. Maybe if you want to look in and maybe if you can find a more reasonable number, come back next budget meeting and maybe we can reconsider it, but
Yeah, we'll look into it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure we're stuck at the number front, but
Yep.
I'll sit down.
You're definitely gonna get calls about sidewalks. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
okay, so where we stand right now is not touching it. We have a capital line item of $106,700 for total public works. We have a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we have public safety. Chief?
Thank you.
The only thing is the Bobby worn cameras. Those are a little tough to get nowadays.
Yes, so what I,
That was me, sorry.
No, I'm joking about the typo. It says Bobby,
Those are
B-O-B,
British, those are the British
B-O-B-Y.
cameras, the bottom.
Yeah.
I figured.
yeah, so I was talking, what I would like to do this year is do a pilot program.
Okay.
Many departments, body worn cameras, I think it's gonna come sooner than later, waiting to be here. So we were thinking of doing a pilot program with one or two different companies to see what the best be for the town. That's, I'm not really sure it's gonna cost any money, but it's not. They're just gonna give us the equipment so that we can see how it works, the pros, the cons of the program. Other departments have done that already.
Are they gonna do all the oversight, all the hardware storage, software
It's the
storage?
beginning, Yeah, but look at all, so we'll get the whole package, we get this. It's like how to edit, how to store it, where it would go.
God, don't say the word edit.
Well, some of those things, but
Yeah.
basically it's, how, when to put it on, when to shut it off. The state is coming up with a policy. We already saw a draft of it. So once that policy comes into play, we will have to adopt it and then we'll be able to.
Chief, is this gonna be something in line with how the Attorney General's office and then all the police departments adopted the vehicle pursuit policy? Is that what you see this going down
Yeah,
that road?
the Attorney General's office and the state police superintendent have come up with that together, along with some police chiefs.
Yep.
Come up with a policy, which I viewed and looked at it. We've made some modifications to it. So, but we would have to adopt a policy in order to get the grant working.
We don't have to give the $3,000 bonus like they're doing to the state troopers, do we?
It's an additional responsibility.
Just so the interest of transparency, so that the other members should know that along with those body worn cameras is going to become more legal pressing issues that's going to require more involvement from either our solicitor's office or the attorney general's office. So that $5,000 number is probably going to go up.
Yeah, again, I'm not really sure what it would cost for the program for us to, try out there. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
it's probably close enough.
Yeah, probably in the beginning. It's just the future projections. I mean, I monitor this stuff and I see what the nationwide and,
Yes.
yeah.
I agree.
So,
Okay.
then as far as the radios, your guys need new portables?
Yeah, we just like $5,000. I have 4 recruits coming in, so but we try to rotate some of them around. Some of the portable radios, we're going to use them for details.
Sure.
So
You guys, they're issued their own radio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we have a line item of $101,000 for capital for public safety.
I'll make a motion that we approve the $101,000 for the capital budget for public safety for the police department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, chief.
IMC.
We have the other chief, fire, capital expenditures.
How many miles does a detail drive? Anybody remember?
The detail.
Yeah, like a police detail, how many miles?
What was the question?
I usually just sit there.
No.
I didn't hear what his question was.
No, not a road detail. Chief,
Oh,
how many miles does, on average,
Oh, a police cruiser?
yeah, like during a day, like a shift? That's all right. I was
Yeah.
just, my thought was, I'm sure Ford is gonna be looking at electric. That would be an interesting thing. Do that.
Do they?
And then the fuel savings must be incredible. Well, maybe not incredible, but. Oh, they're the fastest.
the electric cars are quick off the line, yeah.
Is it,
We're all dying.
The battery.
they went with the
that
Mustang?
Charge
Okay.
these cars.
Yeah.
The
Joe,
Mine.
about,
No, I mean, it's 9 o'clock. Yeah.
yeah.
Right, but they go 400.
Okay, back up, chief, we've got 2 requests here for you.
Yep, first is a SUV for the rescue. We're calling it Squad 10. It's that vehicle I spoke of earlier that the third person uses to go to rescue calls and assist as needed and be available for second use. Currently using the old chief's vehicle, and the texting I've been doing is tonight it won't start, so from here I gotta go see if we can get it running. So right now they're using their personal vehicle, so it's a necessity to get. So we're proposing a small Ford Expedition, Explorer.
Okay.
2022. 50,000 would be enough with the upgrade of the whatever.
The lights. Okay, yep.
And the next item is rescue truck for 375,000. We do approximately 65,000 rescue miles a year. Our oldest truck is a 2016. Are we there yet? But my fear is the time it takes to get these trucks in. I don't want to be caught late ordering this truck and then have to wait.
It's like 18 months out, isn't it?
Well, they're saying 200 days after chassis delivery. That's the number they're not giving me. It's chassis delivery.
I've heard 18 months.
So just trying to be all ready for the next replacement.
Okay, any questions from the council?
Motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve capital for fire in the amount of $425,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have general government, finance, office renovation.
So Fung had requested some funds for office renovation in the finance department, specifically in addition to that office. I do think it's needed. I think we have a number of renovations that are needed in this building. And as part of our process with the new DPW director over the next year, I'd like to get an assessment of this building to see what can be done, both architecturally and also functionally. I think we have a lot of wasted space and we have a lot of interesting features to the building that are covered up by things like drop ceilings. But we also have some exterior needs that are going to be pressing in the next year with repointing of brick, replacement of gutters. We need to get prices on all that stuff because we have some significant needs coming down the road. we have some erosion on the outside of the building that's kind of alarming.
Kate, you said addition. Did you mean expansion?
Expand, well, in addition to the actual building off the back over the training room is something that was
Okay.
proposed, but I think we need some engineering before we can actually determine whether or not that's feasible. So hopefully Mr. Wheeler will be able to help us in this process of evaluating our options. We can come back to the council with a full plan for upgrading the functionality of the building.
So it'd be more like holistic look at, instead of piecemeal, which makes sense.
Correct.
Years ago, we discussed looking at relocating the offices to the first floor because there was a lot of insulation advantages as well as user friendliness, but it never went anywhere. Maha was the planner. We wanted to look at opening up this area and the possibilities there as well. And
Yeah, something actually we discussed with Mr. Wheeler on, I don't know, a second or third day. So we've already started those conversations, but this
I mean,
building,
no matter how you look at those, these are big numbers.
big numbers, yes. But I think we need to look at the structural things first and then the cosmetic things second. So
Okay, so for total for capital on finance, we have the amount of $75,000.
actually, it's zero.
Oh, zero.
Oh,
We're not-
zero.
And again, I just don't think we're there yet.
No, I don't. Sorry, Fung. And the last one here, we have tax assessor for the reevaluation.
So this would just be for the statistical revaluation that would be on the books for the 2023 tax year. I think after we budgeted some out of this current year's budget, out of my budget for tax assessor's office, outside services, as well as next year, and this would be the remaining amount.
Okay. Any questions from the council? We have an amount of $33,870 for capital projects for the assessor.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
I remember one year we went to bond and the only thing that
Oh,
failed was the reevaluation. So we had, I don't know how many millions of dollars that we borrowed for the, so we took it out of the general fund.
Yeah, we
Didn't
did all the
stop
capital.
it. It's a
All right,
great
well,
article.
We did all the capital.
It's 9:00. How does the council feel? Do we want to do the revenues and the wastewater management?
Revenues is on our agenda.
Okay, so we'll do that as well. We're still moving along pretty good. We're at 9:00.
So
Okay.
the wastewater operators aren't present. I don't know if we want to wait on wastewater until next week, but we could go forward to revenue.
Okay, we should probably wait on that. Do we want to do the revenues? Do we want to wait to the next budget hearing? All we have left is revenues and wastewater management, and then bonds, grants and contributions.
And going through the whole budget to cut it.
Yeah, so those are on 322. So what is the council's pleasure? Do you want to continue with revenues and then do wastewater management and boards and commissions next meeting? Or do you want to do revenues, wastewater management, and the other two on next meeting? What's the pleasure?
I think we should do wastewater with them here.
Correct,
Yeah,
I
we
agree.
gotta do wastewater.
And what's the other thing again?
Revenues and expenditures, or revenues, yep.
I don't care. I'm here. It's up to all of them. What do you think, everybody?
Yeah, we can do the revenues, I think.
Okay, we're gonna move on to revenues then. Let me get to that page.
Lot of lines.
So would you like me just to review, to go
Please.
review the changes? All of the licenses are based on the calculations performed by the town clerk, based on what we received last year, and then also what we've received so far this year. So these are estimates based on the best information available. The transfer station commercial fees, again, that line item is our best estimate based on revenues that have been received historically. Building, plumbing, and electrical and permits, we left that line item stable just to be conservative. I do anticipate that the revenues will increase next year, but I don't know that for sure because so much of it depends on economic conditions. So to be conservative, I level funded that revenue projection line. Figuring that if we end up seeing more, then that's great, but we shouldn't rely on it. Then realty transfer fees, that's again, a calculation that was performed by the town clerk. She actually had a little bit higher estimate at 250,000, but I thought that we should moderate that a little at 225,000 just to be safe. Just in case is an economic downturn and there are not as many transfers as we anticipate or as that we've seen in the recent history. We added a line with no value for the high value transfers. That's just for accounting purposes because there's a new transfer tax associated on high value residential transfers. It won't affect revenue, but it's just, we'll have to break it out for reporting. So that'll be a new line item for reporting. If we have any of those high-end, high dollar value residential transfers, which we may not, but in case we do. I believe it's, yeah.
Sorry, what's the number?
800,000.
Yeah, it's strictly residential, can't be commercial or mixed use. So,
It's downtown now. Before we used to think it was Dorset.
probate court fees and fines, again, the clerk had a little bit higher estimate and I moderated that just a little, just so that we're sure that we're being conservative in our estimating. BCWA pilots eliminated. It was based on the agreement that was signed a couple of years ago. It's now zero. They don't tax us for hydrants and we don't get any revenue. The excise tax is, it's complicated, but I agree with the estimate that Fung has given of 857,351. This is based on the motor vehicle phase out calculation that the Department of Revenue does for us. I have a memo here that I can leave with you that further explains from Department of Municipal Finance. The bottom line on this is that we're capped out at our 2018 baseline number of $1,996,562. So this number on this line item for excise tax state, that's the reimbursement. If you add that number to the tax levy for automobiles that you find on the cover page, on the summary page, that number totals that $1,996,562. So by state law, we can't collect more than that from those two line items combined. So if one of them adjusts slightly, the other one will adjust. So the total never changes. And that's a requirement of state law, regardless of the value of our vehicles, how many people bought a new car, how much their car is worth, it doesn't matter. We can't collect more than that baseline amount.
Isn't that going away?
It is.
That's
And
part of it.
so this is following
phased
that
out.
phase out. So,
Next year, right?
right. And so we don't know what's going to happen next year. But this year, this is the part of that calculation. So it's a reduction, but that's based on what the state law requires. It's not a reflection of a reduction in values because certainly values have gone up considerably. And if you, in your packet, you'll find the governor's projected budget, which has a significantly different number in it, but that their calculation doesn't take into account this cap that exists in state law. So it's not a real number. Recording fees went up for deeds and mortgages. Again, that's based on the estimate of the town clerk. Same with marriage and death certificates. Mooring revenues up slightly based on the calculations of the harbor master. Photocopies is down because people just take a picture with their phone. Not as many people get photocopies anymore. Third-party billing estimated an increase of 5%. Hopefully with our new collections company, it'll be more than 5%, but again, wanted to be conservative. I mean, what we have out currently for billables is considerably higher than this, but what we bill and what we collect are two different numbers. So we don't want to overestimate what we're actually going to collect.
We'll have a new collection agency now, so.
We will. So I'm hoping that we will overperform on this line item and that it will be great for everybody. Meals tax is a conservative estimate. of 8.38%. Again, if you look in your packet, there's the governor's estimate. The governor's estimate just uses an average across the state. So they are showing a lower number for the town of Warren, but it's not actually, we've been outperforming the state average. So I did not use that number. I came up with my own based on performance. Our performance is actually better than that. So again, this is a conservative number. And if you just give me 1 second, I'd like to let you know what the latest statistic is, because Bob just forwarded it to me recently. December is the most recent statistic that was provided to us by the state. They are quite behind on it usually. So far this year, year to date, we're outperforming last year by 27.7%, which is excellent.
So this number is conservative.
It's conservative, yes.
Could we consider more, or?
We could, based on the numbers we just received a couple days
So it
ago.
would give us some wiggle room.
Right. I mean, again, it's not going to be a huge dollar change because it's not a huge dollar line item, but there is potential that this number is going to be higher than what was projected when I put this budget together. Fines and penalties, it's, again, that's based on, this is projections from the police department. Our numbers were down last year, COVID related. Hopefully, we're on a better track in the upcoming year. Public Service Corporation telephone transfer tax, that's a state, and a pass through from the state. So that's the number that's been provided to us by the state. General fund investment earnings are down everywhere. Everyone who's got a savings account knows that. We're hoping, actually, this is a target that this is something we're going to actually strive to try to reach. I'm not sure, this is not as conservative a number maybe as we could be using, but it's an aspirational number. In past years, we had much better results, but it has not been good lately. Road duty revenue and administrative revenue, again, there's been an increase in details. We expect that, with COVID restrictions easing and there'll be increased activity due to the infrastructure money that's going to be available, anticipating an increase in those. And I believe that's a conservative number.
Just got a quick question for the fire chief, the police chief. VIN checks. What's the rate for a VIN check now? Used to be, it was 30, right? Wasn't it?
So we charge $10 for
$10.
Warren residents and 20 for non.
You guys are doing like almost 600 VINs a year based on the 20 and $10. Wow,
Yeah,
that's
before
all.
the pandemic, we were actually hiring a detail officer because we were doing.
You couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah, because what was happening is we were having the patrol guys come off the road and do the VIN check, go back in the cruiser. So, but we were doing 20, 30 VIN checks in one day in 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we were hiring an officer from 9 to 1, and we were only doing on Tuesdays because the registry was open. So pandemic. Yes.
We're one of the only departments that does non-residents, right? I know East Providence does. Bristol, no, it's for town residents only.
Everyone comes in unless it's $10
Yeah.
for Warren,
$20. Wow. I was looking at the 8,000. I was like, oh my God, that's like, when you do the math, it's like you're doing 600 a year, roughly.
During the pandemic, I don't know if you guys registered at it, then you went to the registry, they did it for you.
Right. During the pandemic, they actually prevented us from doing VIN checks.
At the registry, they would do it right at the desk
Yeah.
for you.
Right. They actually passed a rule that the towns could not do VINs.
They didn't even look at your car. You
They
just went in
Yeah.
and said, yeah, I bought this out of state, okay.
All right, so we have a total number of total non-tax revenue in the amount of $3,745,422.
So moved.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have automobile tax levy.
So these are really informational. I don't know that you want to vote on these at this point because I don't think we have final numbers in. These are just based on the most current information. So
Yeah.
I don't think you need to vote on them. They're just for information and the tax assessor will update these numbers as he gets more information. Specifically the tangible tax, I think it's today, right? That they're due
Next year, the vehicle taxes will phase out.
Next year, it's gone?
So, yeah, the next tax, so this coming year, we're gonna have, a tax bill by the legislation that's right now, there would be no more taxation. But that means the state would have to reimburse us that full $1.9 million for one comparison.
Well, yeah, what they did was they jacked their car taxes before they knew they were gonna give it up, so they got more money. When the legislature was considering the last time, they jacked their rates up so they could say, well, you cheated us out of this much, when they were talking about changing it back over. So they all jacked their rates, so they're getting it reimbursed at like $70 a thousand, when we're at what, 26? They did.
Where do you go from?
More people?
It's all a bit.
That's a explanation of the things on.
This year, actually, we're at about 30% value from last year. That just is this weird phenomenon that we're seeing because of COVID.
Used cars?
Used cars,
Yeah.
cars, people just having more money to spend on recreational vehicles, thanks to, higher level cars. So the amount of money that we could have seen if it was not under this new legislation with this phase out would have been much higher in automobile revenue. But we're capped at that number that you see there. Our number rose so much, we actually less from the state, but we're able to build more, in the town, just the values are going up so much.
Phenomenon. Hey, that being said, I believe we've reached the end of tonight's focus. So basically, we'll just move forward till the next meeting, which is, what's the date of the next meeting?
March 22nd,
March 22nd. At that point, we'll wrap
6
up
PM again?
the rest of the budget, and that's a wrap. We can have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Don't forget to give your utensils back to Sandy, so we have them for next meeting.
Yes.